Give me one source.
What do you mean one source?
The sun worshippers.
Yeah.
We welcome to the stage.
We're gonna bring here's how this would go down if you were to bring me a source. A fake made-up Greek is going to quote or cite a fake made-up Greek who quotes or cites a fake made-up Greek's document who one time mentions Eratosthenes and his two sticks. That's how you substantiate it.
Got it. It's all fake. Despite the fact we have his methodology and can do his methodology and redo,
Yeah, and it's not exclusive and proves nothing today too.
It is exclusive. It is exclusive. It will not work on the flat Earth. If you don't want to use his assumption in quotes of the curvature of the Earth, add a third stick and on the same line of longitude. Excuse me.
Oh, now it's an assumption. It's not something that he knew.
I said in quotes. In quotes. In quotes. I said assumption in quotes.
So did he know or not?
He knew.
And do you know?
Yeah, I know.
To what degree of certainty do you know that the Earth is a globe?
1,000,000%.
Based on sticks and wait, are you saying for real this? Because dude, even let's just say the Earth was a globe hypothetically for a moment. Let's just say that was the case, and let's say like everyone who currently thinks it's stationary and planar, like in this completely like alternate reality of non-reality, let's say everyone had to flip completely and be like it really was a globe. I would still say that Eratosthenes is a terrible argument for a spherical Earth. Honestly, that's my honest. I'm not insulting you or anyone who uses it. I'm not putting anyone down. I'm saying even if it was a globe and I personally, just completely hypothetically, was like shown whatever curvature, all the whole thing, and it's like absolutely proven, and we all go back to the globe and we're all frolicking, on a globe. Eratosthenes is okay. It is something that could match a sphere if you use those assumptions. So I do give it that, like in the most charitable I can give it, like it is a correlation that could match to that effect, because you can take a surface, put little sticks on it and a light source, and you can bend the surface, like if it's like a bendy, plastic or whatever, and you can move the light source and you can replicate the flat effect when the thing is flat, and then the curved effect, and you can see all the variations. So it would be something that could be like associated with that, but to conclude that it is a sphere based on that, I think is a very, very poor series of logic and a way to go about it, and is not a strong.
Well, then you're incorrect, because if you look at the Eratosthenes measurements done at various latitudes, you'll notice that they cross one another. The more latitudes you look at, the more they cross, and every cross needs to be a position of the sun. Now, so either the sun is in multiple positions at the same time, or the Earth is curved, one or the other.
Did they have walkie-talkies back then? How did they communicate to each other?
You don't need walkie-talkies. You do it all on the same day.
They had a flying pigeon.
You don't need to have flying pigeons. You don't need to have cell phones. You just, you get together a week later.
You need to be in two places at once.
Yeah, you have one crew in one place, one crew in the other.
So how does the one crew communicate to the other crew?
You don't need to communicate because you're taking.
Well, then how do you know what they were doing at the exact same time that they were doing it?
Because you go on a certain day and you measure at a certain time at solar noon on a certain day.
So and how do they communicate this to each other?
They've done
without pictures or without walkie-talkies, without some way to communicate to your other team. Was it 300 miles away? Was that what it was?
Why do you need to
hang on. The thing is, on a certain day at a certain place, on the equator, that there is no shadow in the well. You don't need to tell. Nobody needs to tell you or call you or talk to you. You just make an observation where you're at the same time that there's no shadow in that well. It's just a known thing. You don't have to communicate between the crews.
Well, it's known now, but back then it wasn't known. How did they communicate 300 miles away from each other to know?
He did know. He did know.
And you were there. You know that they know because you were there.
Just read the experiment.
I mean, technically, they would have to have their timing. I mean, first of all, the thing about the whole sticks in the ground, that's what a sundial is. And there's like all kinds of different sundials, and it's been done since the dawn of time because it obviously maps time. So this whole Eratosthenes thing is nothing new. People have been mapping with sundials, which has a flat grid, and have been mapping, understanding the Earth to be a planar stationary surface with the sun moving. And a sundial already maps out the motion of the sun above the planar grid, like the flat disk of the sundial. So Eratosthenes is not necessarily a sundial, but it's a similar type of concept. I guess with that though, Rusted, technically, if they were all honest, and I mean, yeah, when they don't have anything to document it, but I guess the best you could hope for is like they split up and then somehow were able to time it, and then they were accurate and there was no mistakes, I guess would be the claim.
You don't need to time it. You just need to be at solar noon on the same day, and then get together.
Isn't this the same thing though as before, Geo, where like you say the best rebuttal for this would be starting with, well, this would actually be the same on a planar Earth, but we choose to. I know you guys have to do that, but like it would be the same, and people have demonstrated this many, many times. You just won't admit it because you want to use it as exclusionary proof. This is what's called wishful thinking.
No, it's geometrically impossible.
Okay, you're heckling, and just mere assertion doesn't disprove what I said.
That's a fact.
The more places you observe, the worse it gets for the flat Earth. Because if you look at what I'm posting now, every place that those lines cross on the flat Earth needs to be a sun position. So either the sun is in multiple places at the same time, or the Earth is curved and they come in parallel.
Okay, so I have a response to this. So I'm willing to, be charitable and be understanding and understand that the way that that's being mapped in that animation you showed, the claim that the sun would be in different positions. Here's where I don't have the absolute answer, so I can't really debate you on this part of it and say here's the absolute proof, because like I've said before, I mean, it would take a whole team and months and all kinds of time to do it independently. But here's where I would contest that. That requires a certain grid system, a certain map, a certain coordinate, and distances. And I do think that distances, essentially it would have to be in contention for the Earth not to be a sphere, to be planar, because distances are different on a plane versus a sphere, and where those discrepancies would be. So what I'm saying is that it may not necessarily be that the sun is in a different position. It may be that the grid that's used originally, that they're claiming that they're flattening out, is already a globe converted type of system that is going to mismatch with flat because it's already been adjusted. And to get the real one, like I said, I don't have the proof of this to debate it in this way, but to get the real one, we would have to actually measure the distances, or someone would have to measure the distances independently and tangibly, and then validate all those points and the angles to the sun. And I'm not compelled with the idea that it would all be mismatched. The sun is very accurate. I know there's some refraction, things like this, but generally the shadows of the sun are very consistent. You can see them every day and how they move across your driveway and all that stuff. Sundials are very accurate. So the sun definitely, to me, seems like it is in a pointed position. It's in a GP above the ground. It's always in a ground position. And so, nonetheless, even if it did line up at different angles, that could have to do with the way the sky works, even with like lenses or like a crystalline structure. So it doesn't even debunk it from that point. But I'm not necessarily convinced that the sun does triangulate all wonky like that when you match it to the globe coordinates.
Well, then do it and come back. Until that time, I'm going to stick with this data.
Yeah, man. You got to make your own choices of what you want to think is going on.
You can say no and invoke lenses and having to maybe, but until you can do it yourself and go out and measure the distance, however you want to do it, I don't know. Do it the old-fashioned way and walk it like they did in their time. They have in the English. If you watch the English march, they use sticks, and it's a walking stick. Each one. You can do it that way. You can get do it the old-fashioned way with a wheel and just walk.
Yeah, but you see what I'm at least saying in the point, like, are you willing to be like, okay, if the distances or the coordinate or the map was off, then that kind of way that it triangulates all wonky might not actually be the case? Are you willing to agree that that could be the case? If those things are off?
If, and until it's a nice hypothesis. Now come up with the data to show that your hypothesis is correct. That we've mismatched, that we've mismapped the entire globe, and therefore this argument is false. Until such time as you do that, I'll say it's a interesting hypothesis.
Well, yeah, because this is angles to the sun, but you can have angles to the stars, and that's where the arguments of like the GPs, circles of equal altitude, and what I've talked about, this actually goes back to all the stars mapping on coplanar azimuthal grids, because when you do circles of equal altitude, this is what would show it even more, because when you have a GP and then a circle and then a larger circle, larger, and then you have another GP and then a circle, larger, another GP. You have many of these that have larger and larger circles, and then all those circles are going to intersect with each other, and all those points that they intersect on the ground will either be coplanar or they'll wrap around a sphere. So angles to the sun, like you're showing here, and the angles to stars with GPs would review. Now it depends on how exclusive someone thinks that evidence is, but at least in the actual angles of how the stars map to the ground. But like I was saying, this is what links back to coplanar, because all those GPs and all those circles of equal altitude, I think, are going to be essentially function as right triangles. They're all going to be coplanar. And then that goes back to how the stars are mapped to a coplanar grid, because the GPs and the circles of equal altitude are all mapped coplanar as well. And that's why we can already map the stars to a planar grid. And I was talking about the planetariums earlier. It's already the case because the GP grid, I think, is going to show that, but the globe claims it's going to show a curved matrix, and that's what would have to be shown either way. And I've yet to see anyone actually do that in the modern era and modern times to even do that. So I don't think either side actually really has, in my view, like the full evidence of that yet.
Oh, we do, because celestial navigation is the globe evidence. I mean, the celestial navigation only works on the globe. 3 stars, 3 fixes. In fact, MC Toon put up $10,000 for someone to do a simple 3-star fix using flat Earth mechanics and flat Earth math. No one was able to claim it. So it's pretty much, if you look on the second page of any book on how to do celestial navigation, there's a picture of the globe. So
that's really weird, because that's weird, because Oakley told me McToon measured the Earth flat in Antarctica.
Yeah, well, Oakley's an idiot, and Oakley's an idiot and incorrect. If you believe anything he says, you are also an idiot.
He's an idiot, but he asked you, how do you measure the bottom of the mountain to the top, and you couldn't answer it.
And again, you want to go back to that one, but then after he did that, just assume that he did that. Then when he goes to the top of the mountain and looks down, he measures the Earth to be curved. Oh, that's Al Baruni, by the way, in case you guys didn't catch the change.
Yeah, no, that's a whole. We could get into that whole wormhole as well, because that's actually that's actually what's observed on a planar surface. So It's actually just another assumption extrapolation into an assumed radius value based on the optics and where the horizon forms.
Yeah, incorrect again. That's right.
Hold on, that's the whole topic, though, and I know I did kind of say a point, and just respond to both these if you want. Let me just say real quick. The other thing I was going to say from before is, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry, go ahead if you want to respond to that. Sorry, just the celestial navigation. Yeah, I would debate you on that as well. Like, I don't think it actually does, because you're getting a fix. And you're getting an estimated heading, which I think can be adapted to a globe. And I think you may have been convinced that it somehow is native to a globe, but it's actually native planar. And I don't think you have actual evidence that it is. But anyways, yeah, go ahead.
We do. The almanac that you need to find the ground position is a globe-based document done by Globers. Like I said, the whole 3-star fix thing only works on the globe, because a circle of equal altitude would not be a circle on a sphere, on a Mercator map especially, would be extremely elongated. So, and like I said, there was $10,000 out there for anyone to do the first part of celestial navigation, which is a 3-star fix using flat Earth principles. No one, I guess a couple of people tried, but they basically would solve it using globe and then try to backfill. So,
yeah. So I would. If anyone else wants to jump in. I know I'm kind of responding, or we're kind of doing a one-on-one for a second, I guess. But we can, or if anyone else wants to jump in too. But I was kind of quick to respond. But okay, so just on that real quick, with the 3-star fix thing. So here's what I would say. Even like taking your MC Toon thing, since you brought it up, in order to provide that, we would have to have or there would have to be a team that would go out and they would have to actually map the GPs and circles of equal altitude, as I was saying, and basically make a map of the ground and the stars, of their own map of ground and stars, because the globe already has one. The globe model has that of ground and stars. They have something they're selling to the public. Now, is it true or is it not is the question, and where are the disparities? And can you check that as a regular civilian? Have you checked it? That would be the difference, because you already have one, and then you're using works to a certain degree to get a 3-star fix with the coordinate system of how that's being done. What I'm saying about the MC Toon idea, if someone were to do it with a planar Earth, they would have to basically, like that game Minesweeper, where you like open up new areas and you keep you'd have to basically keep opening up new areas of Earth and mapping the stars to the ground to actually have your accurate map and coordinate system to go off. And then when someone says, hey, give me a 3-star fix, you can do it because you actually have the correct coordinate system, and you could show how that planar coordinate system is laid out. Currently, we just have the globe one we're given, and no one's actually independently done it, at least in these discussions. And so his challenge is kind of moot because it would cost so much more than $10,000 to even do that getting 10 from him is irrelevant.
Wow, that was a bunch of interesting things. Yeah, the problem is that the basic mechanics, the basic math of celestial navigation only works on the globe. There's no way to get what you need to get and what you need to solve on the flat Earth. It just doesn't work.
I think you should do a 5-hour debate with Nathan Oakley on this. Get to the bottom of it.
No, I will not debate.
Oh, he can't debate. He's already tried. He got his ass kicked.
No, you can't debate Nathan. He doesn't debate. He just insults, and he doesn't know. He doesn't know math because, well, just very few flat earthers know.
I'm not really trying to invoke him. Someone mentioned him earlier, and I just thought it'd be kind of funny because he talks about this.
Yeah, he talks about this, but he doesn't know what he's talking about.
All flat Earth is the claim that the Earth is planar. Everything else is excluding that. All these other theories and ideas that people are linking to flat Earth, I think, is being done erroneously. Everything from I'll make this quick. Everything from ether to God created to they lie to we didn't go to the moon to everything. Just the one thing that is fucking flat Earth up is this geometric implication of taking this ball and making it flat.
Well, yeah, that's where the contention is. Yeah, no, I hear you for sure. That is definitely, and I will say, like back years ago on Discord, like the 24/7 flat Earth server, that was like one of the only servers that kind of had activity. I mean, there was a few other ones throughout the years, but so a lot of us were there, and there was kind of like culty energies there and whatever else. That server has a lot of history, and I'm talking about the old one too, the original one. But I'm not trying to go into all that. What I'm saying is that one of the things that we all kind of generally, like when we were on there, were saying that like the one thing that, you know, if we're going to use that term flat earthers, like agree, is that the Earth is stationary and planar. Now, maybe not everyone thinks it's stationary though. So that's a question too, but just the stationary and planar. And then outside of that, you know, like maps, models, ideas, you know, but that's just one way to see it, I guess, is like that term flat Earth, just, you know, like you said, the planar nature, and then whether you would add stationary in there or not. But yeah, dude, I hear you. It's like, and the thing is, to me, it seems like in a way, some global Earth folks are like almost gnawing at the bit, like, give us the answers, give us the answers. But it wouldn't really make sense that we would have all the answers right now. And I think that the decentralized nature of it is kind of awesome. Like, it's pretty cool that it's not some group think that everyone just agrees. It's actually kind of beautiful. And to me, it seems more genuine overall as like a collective energy going on. I'm not saying it like collectivism or anything. I'm just using that word in general, like as, you know, that there's a lot of different ideas, and ideally that there's open, free thinking too. So, I mean, I hear you, it can be frustrating if people want a replacement, but if they're open to the journey, if they already think it's a globe, fair enough. But if they're on the journey that's not a globe, then it's like a detective
That's
work
because there's only one side who always has everything figured out, right? Like they think if you say like we don't know, it's like a weakness.
Yeah, but if from the position that they're wrong, they actually know less, you know, in a way. Not putting anyone down. I'm just saying, like, if they're actually in the wrong position, that even if they think that saying you don't know is, you know, a weakness, but then if you actually know something's wrong, but you don't know yet, you're actually like arguably further along the journey by admitting you don't know, because then you're at least getting to knowing versus being in the wrong thing. You're like, it's like going the wrong way to have the wrong thing. And is it the original point that he was? Is it their feeling that they might be wrong that fuels their need to debate it or whatever else? I wonder about sometimes. But yeah, go ahead. Just people in general.
I was saying about the original point that he was making, referencing the sky and saying that it's proof for a globe. You know, if I were to try and extend an olive branch of some kind, I would just ask him, you know, if he knows about kinematic equivalences and if he believes in them, and if he does, then could he steel man that?
Sure. So a kinematic equivalence is all of the motion with none of the forces. So if I have something zigzagging along because it's moving between two magnets or something, I can do the dynamic motion, which will show, why it's being pushed in each direction by the magnet. Or I can do the kinematic equivalent, which will just show the movement. And if I've got different coordinate systems, I can map I can, go and make it look like it's moving in a straight line in a kinematic equivalence. Doesn't mean it's moving in a straight line. It just means I've messed around with the coordinate system enough. So, that's how it looks under that coordinate system. I can make the entire universe or the entire solar system revolve around me by a kinematic equivalent. Me personally, omnivore. And, I kind of think it does sometimes, but I have to admit that mostly people don't agree with me. So, yeah, I don't think a kinematic equivalence is.
I appreciate you saying that, Omni. That was super good faith, man. Thank you. Awesome.
On the kinematic equivalence, I hear that said a lot, but I've not seen anyone do a comparison. Like, here's the globe kinematics, and here's the flat Earth kinematics, and they look the same, or whatever it is. I've never seen that presented.
The Neo-Tychonian paper gives a kinematic equivalent for some of the orbits of the planets in really bizarre ways, and manages to put Earth in the middle with all the other planets going around the sun, and then the sun going around the Earth, or something like that. I forget. And it's been presented as it's equally equivalent to the solar system because this guy, Povovich, I think his name was, did a kinematic equivalence. Well, he only did some of the kinematic equivalence. He did it on a globe, not a flat Earth. And it would be the same thing as saying I made it so it revolves around, my dog. Therefore, it's equally equivalent to the globe model or the flat Earth model because my dog could be at the center of the universe.
Yeah, the Neo-Tychonian model is kinematically equivalent to the heliocentric model. The Neo-Tychonian model actually came out before that. It says that the Earth is stationary, the sun and the moon orbit Earth, and then those planets orbit the sun, and the celestial sphere rotates around the stationary Earth once per year.
Yeah, you have to have like the globe Earth in the middle, and then the sun going around the globe, and then Mercury and Venus and all the other wandering stars going around the sun is one way to do it. That's still globe though, so it's kind of still in that world.
Well, even then, you can just like the celestial sphere doesn't need to be a literal sphere in the same sense that a hemisphere doesn't need to be a literal sphere. It would just be spherical in shape, and it would be, it would be like apparently spherical. Just the same way that we have an apparent size of the sun, the celestial sphere could just be apparently spherical because it is something that we see in the sky, right? It doesn't have to be a geometric shape. Why would we claim that the entirety of everything in the sky is a geometric shape? That'd be like felonious, right? We'd be
Nobody
kind of doing a composition fallacy at that point. We'd be stuck in that.
Nobody thinks that the celestial sphere is an actual sphere. That's not what it means.
Good. Well, I was saying that no one should think that anyways, so good.
Yeah, nobody does. Yeah, nobody does. Everybody agrees with you.
Great. Thanks for contributing nothing to what I said then.
Well, no, it was a good point. Like, apparently spherical.
It's because you're misunderstanding what the celestial sphere means. So I did contribute.
That's just an assertion. Show what I misunderstood.
The celestial sphere is a sphere in the globe model. I mean, it's an imaginary, like, infinite spaced with Earth at the absolute center, hypothetical, but it is like essentially spherical in its structure around the spherical globe Earth. So it is on that, but on a planar stationary Earth, unless someone's going to say the stars are going under the ground, it would be, let's just say, hemispherical for the moment, just to keep it simple, or have some hemispherical nature that in the way it functions. Like he said, like apparently spherical. That's an interesting way to think of it because we can't. It's all apparent. Like we can't go touch it. We can't go confirm it or get a sample or anything. So it is apparent.
Right. If you say there's an apparent position of the sun, you're not claiming a absolute geometric position. You're saying it's an apparent. Apparent is in contrast to actual. There's a reason we use that word.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll explain the difference. So when we talk about the barycenter of the solar system, the point around which everything is revolving, which is not exactly the sun, because the sun is just the largest mass in it, but everything else has a bunch of mass too. Then we're talking about an actual position. We're talking about where that center of rotation is actually located, not an apparent position because we don't see it. It's where, where we're the point that we can, predictably map our rotations around. When we talk about how we see the sun, what angle there is to the sun, that is an apparent position because we're talking about where it appears. So when we talk about where we see it, that's an apparent position. We see the celestial sphere as a sphere. That's all completely apparent. Where the actual stars are in 3 space is a whole different thing that astronomy and cosmology deals with. So, yeah, where we see it, it's apparent. That's what appears means, where we see it with our eyes or with our, optical tools.
Nice one. Yep. And an equatorial mount shows that quite nicely too. Out sweeps across the sky. And it's pivoting on like it has a spherical nature of how it moves. And a planetarium. In order to replicate the apparent way the sky looks, you have to make a dome in a planetarium in order to replicate what the sky. You don't need a ball, you don't need a globe. You actually need a flat floor and a dome to replicate what the sky looks like to us.
And luckily we have the physical model, which unfortunately the globe does not.
Does that have a what model?
The globe does not have a physical model.
That's not true.
The globe can't replicate the sky phenomenon on a small scale. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean it's a physical model, right? Something that has can a replicate. The globe cannot be a model of itself. You can't claim the thing itself is the model of the thing, right? Come on. But the flat Earth does. It does have a physical
model. You have a physical model? What map? What's the map you use?
Have you seen a crock pot?
It's a good example.
What can we do with it? Does it have utility?
Yes, and predictive power.
What map is it? What is the map of the flat Earth? I need to know.
It's in the shape of a heart.
The thing is that there's many models of this entirety that we live in.
So you don't have a
one second. I can give you an example of one model, but you need the entire context. How much time do you have?
I don't think Omnivore's given up. He's gonna get to the end of this road.
I can give you one example of a model that has predictive power. That is not the globe.
This is why Omnivore gets called the globe tard, because he just reads off Google and tells everyone how they're wrong, and he has everything figured out. Like, it's ridiculous.
I'd like to see something with predictive power.
Well, couldn't you, even with more like advanced equipment, you could do like sonoluminescent on a dome in a lab and actually make like however many you could do, but like thousands or even more, like little sonoluminescent stars in an actual small scale model. There's a lot of things you can model with a planar Earth. With a globe, like you got to get water to stick to a ball, let alone like, the stars are light years away. And then the whole gravity issue, dark matter in and of itself, you can't even really do it with any actual dynamics that work.
So I've been asking
none of that. There is a model though that has stood the test of time for as long as time was, with predictive power, explanatory power, cosmological explanation, the origin of the universe.
Yeah.
I can tell you guys what it is if you have a little bit of time. I need to give you all the context, though.
Explanatory and predictive don't necessarily mean the same thing, but please go for it. Shoot.
It has both. It has both.
Either that or ZZ just joined. Did you have a what you? Either way, a Galley.
Is it the Bible? Is it the Bible, Galley?
Is it going to be the Bible?
Yeah.
Also, it's not the dome because Nathan Oakley got upset at me for calling it a dome. It's a container.
So I've been asking in the chat. I've been in and out today for a model. I don't care. It could be a diorama. It could be in a stellarium simulation, like whatever. But something that actually gets the shape of the star trails correct. I mean, this to me is a very basic first hurdle. Of how do you get the star trails to look the way they actually look in real life when people photograph them on a flat Earth.
Joe's been able to give a good example of that.
Who's able to give a good example?
Joe's been able to give a good example of how star trails would work with a dome around a planar Earth.
So I've heard people verbally make this claim, and then when I ask to see the pictures, the animations of it, it doesn't look anything like real life at all.
Let me see if he's around.
Yeah,
are you? Hold on. Are you referring to the same? Are you referring to Joe Hamby's channel?
Yeah, Joe's in the channel. I just want to see if he's around.
No, I know you're referring to it. I was going to bring it up as well in terms of some of the demonstrations. But I was asking ZZ, are you familiar with his channel, or you've seen some of his content, or some of his?
No, I don't think so. But I've seen something. I think it was Alan produced that gets posted here sometimes.
Okay, so you don't know who Joe Hamby is? Is that what
maybe
you're
not?
saying?
No.
Okay. No, it's all good.
To clear things up, that wasn't the model I was referring to. The model I was referring to with predictive power and explanatory power was the Bible. It would take a bit of context, though, the entirety of it. So I need a bit of time to flesh that out.
No, I got you. Well, I think he was asking about the 2-star rotations.
Joe's got his stream up.
Oh, there we go. Okay, well, let's see. So what am I looking at here? There seems to be some images, some pictures from real life. Okay. And then is this now meant to be what's simulated over a flat Earth?
It is simulated with a dome for proof of concept. So it is over a planar surface with a dome for proof of concept that it is not exclusive to a spherical geometric shape. I'm just speaking for Joe because his mic is currently muted.
Yeah, it's on repeat, the video. So if you watch it a few times to kind of see that, because there's a couple different. But yeah, the one part he's showing what he showed on the small scale.
Wait, what's going on in the scene here? I'm seeing, are these stars passing in front of other stars, and like what's happening there? I'm looking at dots moving at various different speeds, and some are crossing in front of others.
Those are counter-rotating lights on a dome over a planar surface.
This one right here. I'm looking.
Yep.
Is this stars moving at different speeds and eclipsing each other and passing each other by?
It's a little fancy. Just look at the general pattern. You have one pole there, and then the equator in the middle, and it's just rotating. Look at that. So you would have the equator down in the middle, the North Pole in the clockwise one, and then the South Pole in the counterclockwise one. So where it says counterclockwise, it'll directly be over can you play the animation? It'll directly be over Antarctica. You see? So like maybe it's not directly on, but they'd look up and they would have a point above their head rotating counterclockwise. Likewise, reverse, and the equator people is that's what they would see as well. This is just the general idea with this dual pole, and it's most accurate down the center longitude up and down. It's most accurate there.
Okay,
preferably
so
below those two poles, between those two poles.
Is this generated by putting simulating the perspective from somewhere on a plane with a dome overhead with two counter-rotating disks of stars on the dome?
Yeah, there's different ways to project this. Well, whoever was showing it, I'm not trying to speak for you, but I could answer it if you can.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that
Joe, if you're
used
there,
is a two-way mirror. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So
this is once again, you have a dome overhead of a planar surface, and you have stars rotating overhead.
Why were there stars crossing each other, though?
Well, there's the simultaneous clockwise and counterclockwise motion, because you were saying how can this be modeled or described, with a planar
in the past video, there were stars going in the same direction, like that seemed to be part of the same clockwise or counterclock. Like within the clockwise rotating section of stars, there were some going much faster than others that were passing them by. Now it doesn't look like that. Now it looks like they're all going at the same rate. But previously, there was a very strange moment where we seemed to have stars at varying different speeds.
Yeah, I mean the physical model is not to claim a actual. I think we get into trouble with trying to have a physical model. What it does is it just gives proof of concept that there are other modalities by which we can assume and then demonstrate what we observe in reality. Is every demonstration absolutely perfect? No. But under the long exposures and even in a lot of the live shots of from inside the model, outside the model, beside the model, above the model, with the azimuthal dome, without the azimuthal dome, with reflective layers, without reflective layers, we can observe what we observe in reality under long exposure.
So we were debating, there was a lot of debate earlier today about the nature of star trail arcs looking clipped by the horizon, the disappearance of stars, and then the reappearance of stars, the missing arc segments of circular star trails. So is that being reproduced here? Like if I put a camera in the middle of a flat floor, am I going to see stars dip towards the ground and then disappear from view for a while and then reappear again, coming back up to continue the phase or path?
If I could make the model large enough, absolutely. They're on a small scale model like that, I can't get a camera small enough for actual scale to mimic the human eye at 6 feet above the surface. I can't do that. Plus, I don't have Atmos in the model. I can kind of mimic it to some degree with reflective layers induced by two-way mirrors. But like I said, with or without all that, like you still get that kaleidoscopic effect of the sky that's apparent, and it's relative to the observer's position.
Hey, Joe, I've heard other people say kaleidoscopic sky. Like, what do you mean by that when you say kaleidoscopic patterns in the sky?
So you have a central rotating pattern, and then as you move out and away from that pattern, you get a fractal sequence of that pattern, or a Mandelbrot sequence of that pattern, whatever you want to call it. And it's also rotating, but in an apparent opposite position. And the central rotating system and the ones out towards the edges are coming from the same source, but have differences in appearance, if that makes sense.
Okay, so like just to steel man what you're saying we have the two rotations in the north and the south, and basically, let me make sure I got that right. The kaleidoscopic effect is those two different rotations plus whatever's in between. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the kaleidoscopic effect gives us the northern star trails, the equatorial star trails, and the southern star trails from a single rotating star field.
Okay, thank you.
Well, devil's going to be in the details, right? There's a lot of specific angular and geometric features of real life star trails, of the fact that they form concentric circles, the fact that the spacing between two adjacent stars doesn't appear to change, the fact that the concentric circles of the star trails, whatever you want to call it, they go out of view, they're clipped, they are not visible. Like the lower halves of those circles are not visible where the star trails seem to meet the horizon. So it's like all of these details do need to be worked out.
So this model of yours is a flat Earth model, or what?
That's what was being presented here.
It's specifically a Hebrew cosmology, ancient Hebrew cosmology based on biblical text.
So what is this? Like this is in the Jewish book, or what?
Jewish is one of those vague terms that's used interchangeably. Depends on what you mean by it. But Hebrew is a good word. Hebrew cosmological model will be accurate.
People will prickle at me if I say that I think flat Earth is predominantly a religious belief, but it does seem that, at least for a lot of people here, the Bible is, a source of reference, or if not the Judeo-Christian Bible, some sort of ancient religious text or tradition. I guess it doesn't have to be a text; it could be an oral tradition. But it does seem for most people there is some anchor point to some form of ancient world cosmology that's tied up in some form of faith system.
Well, you could form a syllogism for why that would be the case. So if not globe and flat Earth or planar stationary Earth, then unique centered position in the cosmos, the entirety. And if unique central position in the cosmos, the entirety, then there are implications to that. So it would lead people to sort of accept the belief or what you're calling faith here. I call faith like, justified covenantal trust. But yeah, it would be a logical deduction that if flat Earth, then creation. But that's more of a transitive property argument.
Rusty, were you?
It's just like, I was just going to say, it's just like the Aristophanes text. Like the way that people believe in the Bible is the same way that you guys believe in Aristophanes and these guys existing. So, yeah.
Yeah, except one thing has like 24,000 substantiating manuscripts.
Yeah, you can't compare the Bible with that. That's crazy.
A fake Greek.
Well, I can to somebody who doesn't believe in the Bible, and then they're going to come in here and say, "Oh, Aristophanes, all that's legit, and we believe this text," but they won't. They won't give credence to this. I mean, I personally am not Christian, so it doesn't matter to me either way. But I see some contradictions here, and just had to point it out.
I'd say it's across the board though, with people because it's not really globe versus planar stationary. It's more like globe versus not globe and planar stationary versus not. Those are true dichotomies. But in the planar stationary realm, like when in this forum, there's plenty of folks from all different spiritual walks of life. So I don't see as many. I might argue that there's more non-spiritual people than spiritual people.
I haven't taken a poll on it.
In the religious sense, the organized religion way.
No, it's not necessarily organized religion. I mean, the beliefs here are diverse. for sure. But it does seem like clearly a central glue to the flat Earth community is that we are living at the center of the universe, that we are like, it feels very interwoven with some form of creationism in the broadest sense of, the world is created around the position where we find ourselves because it was crafted.
Yeah,
I
that
would
would
agree.
not necessarily be the case unless you'd have a philosophical preference otherwise, because the abductive argument otherwise, the odds are not stacked in one's favor.
Well, yeah, and we were ZZ. We were going over the other day the idea, like I may have mentioned when you were in here, the idea that like atheism is like born with the globe, kind of idea. Now I know there's like going to be claimed histories and when did atheism come in, but there's definitely an argument to be made that atheism kind of comes with the globe or was born with the globe, because it does seem like on one level. Okay, there's going to be some people that are trolling or just kind of trying to cling on to a social group or whatever it may be, but people that are genuine in their journey, and if they, from my observation, when they coming to a planar stationary, doesn't even have to be stationary, some people have planar that might be in motion, but let's just say not a globe or planar, I suppose, if we're going to bring that in as well, but they come to that view. It seems like there's that phrase that people have said, like, oh, there's no atheists on flat earth, like people used to say that phrase, or like there's no atheist flat earthers, basically, that kind of idea. And it doesn't really seem like there are any that I'm aware of. There's like a few like caveats that I could share, which I won't go on long right now, although I could share those, of people that, like one guy, for example, said that he just thought it's always been here. So it never was created. So there wasn't really a creator because it's just always been here. So in that way, it's kind of like no creator, but it doesn't really mean that he doesn't think there's a higher intelligence per se. So it's sort of like sort of like atheism. Like there's no like God out there. It's just always been here. Anyway, so there's some different ideas like that. But yeah, generally it does seem like, I mean, it's hard, almost everyone, let's say, who does seem to come like genuinely to a stationary or to a planar and or stationary viewpoint, and et cetera, have some view that there is like a creator. And some of them go from atheism to like, okay, well, there has to be some creator. Maybe they don't know what it is yet. They're not necessarily in any of the traditions like you're talking about, some of these ancient spiritual, like some people are more neutral or they have their own, whatever it may be. There's a wide range. And then when you look at all these spiritual traditions, they all have essentially a planar state, and most of those are stationary as well, unless there's any that were in motion, but they're all like pretty much planar and stationary, all these traditions as well. So is it actually like reconnecting with our humanness and like our ancestry and everything else that goes with that, and that the globe is kind of the deviation and then the atheism that's born from it. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess even beyond even calling it necessarily spiritual, like I can imagine there are secular, flat earthers, but maybe then the broader thing that seems like a big glue to me, that includes religion, spirituality, but isn't limited to that, is this more kind of general idea of ancient traditions of thought, being something we should return to, being inherently more trustworthy than modern scientific consensus. Like there does seem to be a through line here of like the ancients knew something that today has been suppressed. That being, that we live in a radically different cosmology than the modern scientific consensus.
Well, yeah, with this paradigm of materialism that we're in, and then the atheism that can come with that, not for everybody, and then the way religion and science and religion were separated and split, and everything that goes along with all of those facets. Yeah, worldview it's a heavy thing. Like it's really interlinked to a lot of like layers. And I think what you were saying though, I mean, planar and stationary, like if we take those two, it's pretty difficult to think that just got there randomly when it's like literally placed there. Like it would have to be put there for a reason. Arguably, I mean, there's maybe some other ways to see it, but so yeah, it's pretty compelling. And then the fact that you would be, so just very briefly, there's a thing with the heliocentric materialism model where there's like this like disenchantment or like loss of meaning. And like Friedrich Nietzsche wrote about that when they took the sun and put it in the center. They took the earth out of the center and put the sun in the center. There's this like existential despair. Anyways, there's all these layers that go with it when you're like displaced, in that way, and everything that comes with that. Whereas if you come from a view that it's stationary and planar, then it does seem like it like defaults people in a way to some kind of a way in which, like, if we're on the plane of the Earth and then all of the stars are above us, then it's like it's all placed here as if you walked into a building and you're like, okay, somebody built this building, and it's in that sense. And there's no real like valid that I've heard of that it could be the way the Big Bang claims or something that could be more random or chaotic for it coming together.
Big Bang is silly, honestly. Like, who believes this? Like 20 billion years ago, some scientists figured out what happened. Like, this is
It was a
crazy, man.
Jesuit. There's a Catholic Jesuit priest, Jesuit trained Catholic priest who came up with it.
Yep, and they brought the globe to Asia.
Yeah, what does that got to do with anything?
Jesuit
The fact
mission.
Got to do with
They also put people.
Chinese
They
didn't
bring.
have the globe until the
what does
17 or 1800s.
This is a
They
Jesuit.
also out. They
what does
also
it
outlawed
the fact he was
the
Jesuit
globe
trained?
when it first came on the scene. They outlawed the globe. The Jesuits the Catholics did. So they were on your side until they weren't.
So what does it being a Jesuit have to do with the fact that Dimitri was a scientist?
Well, the Roman Catholic Church, right? Copernicus and all those guys.
Copernicus, okay. But I mean, the fact he was Jesuit is
Well, here's
like,
the
so
reason.
what?
I'll tell you what it has to do with it. They had you with the religion, and then they're like, shit. Some people they were losing it. It was always a fight for power. The religious people were trying to keep the power. They had to sway over the people. So they're like, yo, how do we do it? No matter what, we get them. If they're religious, we'll get them on this end. And if they want to believe in this atheistic bullshit, Big Bang bullshit, we'll get them this way. So either way that we go, we got them.
There you go. There you go. Once again, incredulity alert.
What you mean incredulity? I laid out a whole story. That shit was dope.
Yeah, that's just an abductive argument on Jeremy's end, and it actually is a more convincing or compelling abductive argument. You know what an abductive argument is, right? It's a more convincing, compelling abductive argument than the evolution, Big Bang, random, genital smashing model. That's a much more convincing argument.
It's not random, and
Well, it definitely is a
hear this a
genital
lot.
smashing model for sure.
No,
I
genital
don't
smashing.
feel-
I was talking about evolution. Evolution is eons of random genital smashing, which produced human consciousness arbitrarily.
No, not arbitrarily. I mean, I think evolution's the opposite of disenchanting. I mean, I think it is something that absolutely infuses life with a very clear sense of meaning and striving and purpose.
Yeah, but then you'd be arguing that things tend to become better over time.
Well,
why
not necessarily.
would things tend to become better over time?
Things tend to become
Because
more
that's how
complicated.
humans operate. That's hope.
Yeah.
Even
No,
if you
I'm
live
just
in
talking
like
about in the grand
usually
scheme,
get-
if we're doing an internal critique of the evolution model, why would things go from not consciousness to consciousness, which is obviously better than not consciousness?
Well, things tend to be, I mean, the driver of evolution is energy consumption. Like things that can consume more energy and reproduce more copies of themselves reproduce more copies of themselves. And the changes that make one more capable of doing that are the ones that proliferate. And like you can track in some sense, what you might call evolutionary progress into things like metabolism and body heat and just like, we and our brains are throwing off so much more heat than most other organisms on Earth, and certainly compared to inorganic matter. There is
Because
a
of the
clear
brain.
progression of life
Because of the
being able to take control of its environment and spread itself.
The brain is a massive user of energy. So you need a massive amount of energy consumption to keep the brain going, which is why fucking dolphins don't make sense, dude. Dolphins don't make sense, bro.
What do you mean? They're highly.
Their brain
Dolphins are
makes no
intelligent.
sense in an evolutionary point of view. From an evolutionary point of view,
They're
They're
incredibly
very smart, by
successful
the way.
predators, though. Like they hunt as packs. They have
Yeah, they're
techniques.
very
for
smart.
control.
They're very smart.
My main contention with evolution is how the male and the female both independently continued to develop, Because you'd have this asexual creature, right?
No, that's a
Obviously,
newer thing. That's a newer thing that didn't exist back in the day.
you don't think that in evolution it
There
started?
was no asexual or pansexual or any of this crap, thousands of years ago. Come on.
Well, I think it's
Do you know what
a confusion
asexual
of terms
means?
of what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
people who are not into sex, right? That's essentially
You're just
like.
gonna breeze
No,
right past dolphins.
no, that's not what we're
Well,
talking
That's
about.
dolphins
not
are
what
very smart. We went over the
asexual
dolphins.
means.
What else do you want us to say? Like, they're smart animals.
Wait. Asexual reproduction is a very specific thing in biology.
But dolphins are cool.
Dolphins are actually amazing. They may have very high intelligence. There's some really interesting things about dolphins. Have you guys heard there's a thing called dolphin births, where a woman gives birth in the water with dolphins, and it's supposed to have some people claim like profoundly beneficial like blessing effects, like the sonar that the dolphins are putting out, and maybe even other like metaphysical or spiritual world level like healings and things. Anyway, it's pretty profound, like that whole thing. And then also people have claimed to like communicate with dolphins too, like in the spirit world. There's some kind of higher spiritual energy that they have, but that's a whole topic in and of itself.
What if they eat the baby though?
No, I'm saying
No, I
the
don't think
brain
they
is
do.
unnecessarily.
They don't I don't think they do that like in the actual like dolphin
Usually
birth.
when
A
people have
dolphin's
that, they
brain is
also
unnecessarily.
go ahead.
Jeremy, you gotta go. We're gonna wait until you go. That's Jeremy's signature move. Sometimes he pulls back and then disappears.
I was gonna say
I know
usually in those
evolutionary.
cases where
No, he
people
might. I
like
think sometimes he can talk.
Do I
Sometimes he
get
can't.
like 1 second to say shit? Like, I don't know. I'm just gonna say the dopest shit on here, so I don't know why everyone wouldn't just stop and let me talk.
Yeah.
I can't go now. I'm busy.
Okay.
I want to hear more Jeremy.
So I'm no evolutionary biologist, but I did learn something very cool, which is that sex, in a sense, it predates gender, it predates sexual reproduction, because there are species of single-celled organisms that will trade DNA with each other. Like they'll go and meet up and swap packets of DNA for their genetic diversity. And then when they reproduce, that's separate. That's the budding. So cells, prior to multicellular organisms, prior to the exchanging of genetic information being so closely associated with reproduction, there are cells for whom their reproduction is solitary. They bud off and just divide into multiple cells. But during their life, they meet up with other cells to trade genes. Like that is, it's a sex that changes the genetics of the adult, quote unquote, organism.
Right, like amoebas or
Yeah.
bacterias. The issue I have with evolution is that you would need the penis and the vagina to develop individually and have a specific purpose outside of each other. What
So
purpose
there's
does a penis
yeah.
have to develop on its own? And what purpose does a vagina have to develop on its own, if not for
So
reproduction with each other?
there's a species of slugs I was learning about where they don't have gender. They're all the same. And they all have the capacity to produce both sperm and eggs. And they have a little like spike tendril thing that comes out that they can inject their sperm into another slug. So they meet up with each other, and when they mate, they do like a little fencing thing, and then the winner injects into the other one, and then the other one fertilizes its eggs and then, spawns, those babies. So they don't have gender, they don't have complementary systems to interlock with each other, but they do have a capacity to inject each other with sperm.
Right, so
For,
let's take that to its logical entailment, right? So let's say that that was the primitive. Earlier on, that's what everything was doing, or a majority of things were doing. What reason at any point does a thing branch off and exclusively have the one organ and the other? And then
Right.
what
What causes a
purpose?
species to produce that differentiation?
Well, what
I don't
purpose
know.
does that organ function on its own? Because it's not like a lion and another lion, a male and a female lion. Let's say that they were asexual and then they became one and the other. There's no purpose of one on its own. So it would have to be two different entities developing over a period of time for a purpose, but by itself, they're purposeless. Like that makes no sense.
Well, no. That was the point of me bringing up the slug example of their species that are sexual but agendered. Every individual could do either the male or the female reproductive roles. And I guess I could imagine over time that transitioning into from a situation where every individual has both capacities to a situation where, based on your particular genetic cocktail, you skew one way or the other harder and harder into giver or receiver of the genetic
Why would that ever be
exchange
preferable or beneficial? Do you see what I mean?
to
Like that would
everyone
never
being
be
hermaphrodite.
preferable or beneficial.
I mean, just generally specialization is quite a driving force. Like, there are ant species that have no differentiation. It's like all the ants are just ants. They don't have workers, they don't have queens. And then there's ant species in which you've got the queen that does all the reproduction and the workers which don't do any reproduction, which just keep the queen alive. It's really fascinating that there are ant species that run the entire spectrum of this. From
But you see
there are
what I'm
ant
saying though,
species
right? To
all
branch
ants
off from that, what you mentioned with the slugs, right? That seems to be a working model. Why would it be preferential or beneficial for any given species to branch off into necessitating the other sex, right? Because technically, like the dependency on the opposite sex to reproduce evolutionarily would be a net negative because it's dependent on a given condition, whereas the other thing, which is like asexual reproduction, being able to reproduce with any sex, in the evolutionary model, that would be preferable. So that ought be the direction it would have went. It makes no sense for these two different things that function together to develop separately. It's completely illogical. And for us
No,
to
I
take
think
that and say, yeah, that's likely the case because we want it to be, it's more of a just philosophical preference.
so. I think that your argument here could be just as well applied to like the different organs and tissues within a multicellular body. Like single-celled amoebas don't need anyone else to reproduce. They can just split and divide. But my heart cells and my lung cells and my brain cells are dead on their own. They are completely dependent. They are completely dependent on the functioning of my entire body. The survival of the genes in my skin, bone, blood, brain, everything cells depend on the entire system working together to get one special category of cells, the sperm cells, out the door, right? So
I
we
see
see
what you're
single
getting at, but it's
cellular.
not quite analogical because now you're speaking about one closed system, and what I'm referring to is two separate closed systems developing in a very specific direction that are codependent when they could have just continued to develop not codependently. What's the evolutionary purpose for splitting? So if there's no
The
evolutionary
reason
purpose
I
for splitting, we would just be being arbitrary.
the reason I bring this up of the dependency and the differentiation of roles, though it's not a perfect analogy with different cells within a single individual, is I do see a comparison between that and gender, but I think better comparison is what I was bringing up about hive insects, right? Of like, if there are species, there are still existing species of ants where every single ant is a autonomous reproductive unit, right? It lives its own little life. It can meet up with another ant of its species and reproduce, and that's it. Whereas the colony structure has these incredible dependencies. Most of the worker ants can't even reproduce, and then the queen is completely dependent on the rest of the workers just to survive. So you could say that's more fragile, right? And yet it's more successful empirically. The more complicated hive structures where independent reproduction has been stripped away from most of the individuals, that's the majority of ants. And the ants that are running around, that each individual ant is its own completely viable reproductive unit, are far fewer than the ones that have taken to this strategy of complexity. And furthermore, these social hive insects, they produce males with wings who then fly to other hives. They don't just reproduce internally, right? So just across the entire animal kingdom, there are and just biology of life. There's just all of these examples we could point to of specialization and interdependency that, you're right, does make the individual completely dead in the water if they lose the support system that they're meant to be a part of. But with with the partners they're meant to be a part of, the entire system as a whole is dominant. It functions much better.
Right, but they would have to branch off and develop individually. So, like, for whatever reason, at some point, there's a mutation that created male and a mutation that created female, right? And then it was preferable for the individual to have a distinction between male and female rather than having both parts. But there's
I don't
no
know if you can say
reason for
it's
us to
preferable for
think
the individual.
there's no reason for, well, yeah, because it's two different branches of evolution that would happen after that. But there's no reason for us to think that, given the evolutionary model, that this would be beneficial. In the evolutionary model, it would be beneficial for everything to be asexual.
No, I mean, again, it's just like, is it preferable to the individual worker ant that gives its life and never reproduces and dies fighting to defend the colony? No, but it's still its genes that are in the queen that it's defending that is laying all of those eggs. Like, that's the thing, is that, like, what is considered preferential from an evolutionary perspective doesn't care about the individual. It cares about the population propagation of genes.
Right, but that would be after the fact, us looking at something and then using that as an explanation for the thing that must necessarily have happened given the premise we're trying to prove. So we need to start at the start. We can't look at the consequent and then say, well, because we have this, we can assume that it is preferable. It's necessary that it's preferable.
What I see, not as a biologist, but someone who's taken some interest in this, is that there does exist a pretty clear spectrum that we see in the animal kingdom, from organisms that are, and not just animals, but going down to single cells as well, from organisms that have no sense of gender at all, but have some mechanism of gene swapping, like amoebas that do gene swapping with each other, to the example of the slugs, where every individual is a hermaphrodite and can produce both types of sex cells, and they trade with each other. But there's no sense going into it, that one of them has to play the female role and the other has to play the male role. To then, there are species, even vertebrate species of fish, that like mostly have a pretty clearly defined sense of gender, and yet under certain circumstances they can switch their gender. There's certain species of fish where a fish born male, only producing sperm, under certain environmental factors, there's like a epigenetic switch that gets thrown, and the body starts pumping completely different hormones through the fish, and it transitions, and now it's producing eggs instead of sperm. So I can imagine a progression from every individual has all reproductive capacities to every individual has all reproductive capacities in theory, in principle, but tends to specialize into a particular role to finally losing the ability to do the other role entirely.
And that must have necessarily happened before a majority of the species we have that preference, that preferential. Like, I guess you could call it a biological decision, but it's more of like this wins out when we smash the M&Ms together, if you know, like that game. Like, this wins out. But at the same time, we still don't have a reason for that preference. Why things would prefer to get better, especially given like the law of entropy, where things prefer to degrade over time. Why with speciation do we special plead and say things prefer to work towards the better thing and not degrade over time?
The reason life does not degrade over time due to entropy is because life is a catalyst for entropy. Life is an accelerator for entropy. It's very easy to look at all the complexity, the organs, the cells, these complicated dynamics amongst populations, specialized roles between individuals within a species, gender, difference between the queen and the workers, whatever, and just feel like this is sort of impossibly complicated. It must be going against the flow of entropy, but you just need to look at it with a thermal camera. And you just need to ask the following question here. Like, if you have an apple sitting on the ground, how quickly will the energy in that apple disperse into the universe if you just let it sit there under sterile conditions versus if you let it rot due to bacteria versus if an animal eats it and digests it and runs around? What we are not seeing with our eyes, but you see it under the thermal lens, is that we are radiators. We are radiators of entropy. We are rapidly consuming low entropy energy and outputting, shitting out literally into the universe high entropy. Like, we are the catalyst that the universe found to accelerate the process of increasing entropy. The order and complexity that exist within biological systems is multiple times made up for from an entropy perspective by how much waste they produce. That's what we do. We eat, we reproduce, and we consume energy, and we produce waste. So, from the universe's balance sheet of entropy, we are entropy outputters, not something that goes against the flow of entropy, something that accelerates it.
Okay, so given that is the case, on a cosmic scale over eons and eons of time, we're still waiting on the answer to the question, why would something prefer to move towards better, more effective, more practical? Why would a giraffe prefer to mate with a giraffe with a bigger neck? Why would a peacock prefer to debate with or to mate with a peacock who has a more extravagant tail? That preference is not accounted for. That order in nature is not accounted for. We're just sort of begging the question and assuming it's there.
No, but I maybe don't understand, but I did give the answer there of, like, very often in physical situations, there is a high concentration of energy that does not have an easy way to disperse itself immediately. And complexity exists at the point where energy is finding a way to disperse itself. Like, if you have dry logs left out, once a spark gets going, the fire will spread to consume all of the available fuel. The fire is a pretty complicated thing, chemically, physically, geometrically, the shape of the flames, what's actually happening. Like, the fire is, in a sense, a living process. And you would be like, oh, I had all this inert matter, and now suddenly I have all of this complex activity in terms of the flame. What's going on? Well, what's going on is that this is what it looks like when energy releases, when entropy increases, when a large storage of energy that didn't have another way to release itself now finds a way to release itself. And what I'm saying is that life is a means through which energy can be released, a means through which entropy can be increased. Let me put this into very clear numbers here, because we can count entropy numerically. Crudely speaking, the amount of entropy in the universe is the number of photons that exist. Energy is conserved, but it becomes more dispersed. So one high energy photon is low entropy, and 20 low energy photons are high entropy. The process of a high energy photon breaking up into many more low energy photons, that is increasing entropy. Where once energy was concentrated in a single packet, now it has been shattered into many smaller pieces. That is what life is doing on Earth, because the sun is outputting high concentrated, low entropy photons, and Earth absorbs those into the biosphere, into plants in photosynthesis, and then outputs waste heat. So if you look at Earth under a thermal camera, you see this dramatic difference in the entropy of the light coming in from the sun versus the light that is radiating off from the Earth at night. And it's wildly different than on a planet or a body of mass without life on it. Like if a rock in space absorbs heat from the sun and then radiates out that heat again, there is some increase of entropy. The energy that the rock heated up absorbing light from the sun that then cools and re-releases into space is energy being broken down into smaller pieces, but at a much slower rate than what the Earth is doing. The Earth's entire ecosystem is in the business of chopping up photons. And the numbers I gave were the specific numbers. This is the estimate. For every single high energy photon that comes in from the sun to the Earth outputs 20 low energy photons. It's a much higher rate of the breakup of energy into smaller pieces, the fragmentation of energy. And that is what the meaning of entropy is, the fragmentation of energy. And that's what you're doing when you eat sugar and run around and breathe heavily and your body radiates out heat. You are churning out entropy into the universe.
I guess my rebuttal would be then, at best, your argument would be for the possibility of life to come from such a thing. And then also we were talking about the two sexes to develop individually from not two sexes. You'd be arguing for the possibility of that. So in which case I would ask, how much time are you granting yourself when you argue for that possibility? Because with
5 billion
infinite
years.
time, what's that?
5 billion years about?
5 billion years is a very long time to grant yourself.
Or 5, I forget whatever the numbers
So
are.
given
But,
5 billion years, why
The number is 14.6 billion years.
14.6
no, not the
billion
age of the
years?
universe, the age of life on Earth.
Oh,
The
okay.
age of life on Earth is 14 point
Cut
or
down,
5 billion.
zzpop.
No.
How over this much time? Like, can you give me a mechanism of action of how we're going to get one new gene with one new function?
What do you mean? There's mutations all the time, like constantly.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, so for example, like the human DNA sequence is 200 times larger than bacteria.
Yeah.
How does that elongation happen?
How does the elongation of DNA happen? I mean, how does any change to DNA happen? I mean, the DNA is replicating itself, and the replication process is not a perfect copier.
Uh-huh. So can you tell me like how an insertion mutation would happen, or just like give me some details, please?
I am not a genetic biochemist. I don't know. I've read things about what goes on in our cells with the ribosomes and cutting things in and out of the DNA, and what happens when it unspools DNA and then grabs nucleotides to create, a complementary strand for cell division, and where mutations slip in. I am not an expert on the details there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. The ribosome's like 50 proteins you need to make one protein. It's crazy how the same thing that are needed to like replicate DNA or proteins like are the same. It's the same sequence that somehow evolved. And we need like 50 proteins to make one protein. So like, and it has like a whole transcription translation system built within it. Is that not crazy to you?
It's wild crazy.
I don't even know how it could happen. That's what I'm asking.
The universe is hard to believe, I think.
What's your best evidence of evolution?
What do you mean by best evidence for evolution? I mean, are mutations not observed all the time?
They are.
Like people are working on stuff in the lab, putting bacteria under different stressors, and then suddenly like, oh, here's a new bacterial strain that appeared in this petri dish that now is resistant to this compound, whereas all of its siblings were killed off by it.
But you never get any new information from bacterial resistance. You don't get a new gene. Usually you'll have, turn off genes or have horizontal gene transfer from stuff that was already existing, but we never see like any new gene appear ever with like a novel function or anything. So even like with the Linsky coli experiment that had hundreds of thousands of, golly, probably millions of generations now going for 40 years. And then like we still have E. coli, we still have all the same genes. It's just like the genes there are put under a new promoter. So instead of citrate transporter ion pump being used with anaerobic conditions, now so at first it was only turned on in anaerobic environments without oxygen. Now they can use citrate in aerobic and in anaerobic conditions. So it's kind of like epigenetics, just like regulating stuff that's already there. And that's after probably, I would say, over 1 million generations. But yeah, there's no new information.
I mean, I don't remember the details of what they said the mutations were, but I have seen things on one experiment where, yeah, they kept moving bacteria from like one petri dish to another, and at some number of generations, bacteria appeared that could now digest completely new compounds in the petri dish that their ancestors were not able to digest. So
Yeah.
I would definitely call
Oh
that
yeah, like the
new functionality.
nylon. That's one thing. So like yeah, nylon, but so yeah, they say like the nylon ability to break that down like increased, and so like the protein that was present to break down nylon was they considered it, and I'm quoting them, as a protein with an enzyme with promiscuous activity, so it could already break down a wide variety of things. And they're like, oh yeah, now it's better at breaking it down, but it doesn't gain any new protein or anything. That's the thing. I've never seen like any novel protein with novel functions form. And I just looked it up. So 80,000 generations of E. coli has been observed from like 1988. 80,000 generations. I was thinking it might be more. So it's like rounds up to about 7 generations each day. And yeah, they just exponentially increase. So that's been going on for a while. And yeah, there's just no new genes or anything, no new bacteria. So we definitely can't see it happen empirically. And I'm wondering,
This seems
like,
a little
best
semantic to
evidence.
me. Like I'll hear things from people they're just like, "Oh, this protein changed, but it's
Mhm.
still a version of a category of proteins, but it's a new subtype of it." In the same way that people are like, "Oh, well, this thing is still part of the category of life of its ancestors, but it represents a new subcategory of that." And I just like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know like like where you would draw the line and be like, okay, this is a version of this type of protein versus this is a new version. Like that feels like sort of more semantic distinction than anything. Like if the proteins in life can change generation by generation due to genetic mutations, like I don't see what the limit is of that. If changes can occur, why can't they just arbitrarily accumulate?
The definition of evolution is allele frequency changes over time. Now, this definition has changed over the years because, I think it's because like they have trouble like proving the other things, but allele frequency changes over time. So we can have like dominant recessive genes like, blue eyes, brown eyes, so on and so forth. Things that you can actually see happen in population genetics. But, like, the question is how do we get a new allele? Like, where do we get new alleles pop up? You have to have, like, a new, like, gene, so it needs a promoter sequence, an activator sequence, a stopper sequence, and then you're gonna have, things that, external from the DNA are gonna go and activate it whenever it's needed and signal for this gene to be produced. And then, it's gonna be spliced out, like the non-coding regions are gonna be spliced out. It's gonna go get folded in the Golgi apparatus, and then it's gonna go get transported to where it's needed. So there's a whole system regulation, even for one gene. It's not just even the DNA sequence. It's many it's activator and promoter sequences, stop sequences within the DNA, but also external, machinery and signal molecules. And it's like a whole setup that's needed even for one gene. So that's why it's been very difficult to, as you can imagine, have a new gene. You can have like alterations in that genetic code for that protein, let's say like, one maybe amino acid gets switched out. That would mean that like the codon was different that coded for the amino acid. But so yeah, one amino acid switched out, but it's still all the same thing. It's in the same location. It's the same protein. It's not anything new. Like I would imagine you have to have like an insertion of some DNA sequence that's extraordinarily long to like make a protein, and then have all the other stuff come into place. At some point, you had to have elongate the DNA because, like I said, humans, their DNA is like 200 times longer than even any bacteria strain. So there's a lot of complications with that too. If you have like insertions of random DNA strands, you have like your whole frame shift mutation happen if you insert DNA. Like everything gets shifted off, everything's thrown out of balance. And so that's why I'm wondering even the mechanisms behind it. And I've never encountered such a thing. Even at the cellular level. I never encountered any new genes, any new alleles, anything like that.
But you're aware that like base pair like mutations happen. It's like, okay, like the bacteria of generation, 500, when we sequence their DNA compared to their ancestors in generation 1 in one of these ongoing experiments, it's like, it's like the A is a G here. It's like, they find differences in the DNA, and those differences have implications for the proteins the bacteria produce, and that has implications on survival. Like, okay, this bacteria at this generation can now resist or digest a compound that would have killed its ancestor because one of its proteins is quite different than its ancestor's protein because this segment of its DNA has had this many different flips of, and I don't know all the details, but I'm fairly sure, elongations, of DNA occur. I mean, I know there's species that can vary quite like wildly in terms of even just from one individual to the next, um, of even like how many chromosomes they have, like certain plants, that can just like very rapidly in a few generations accumulate redundant copies of chromosomes and then start accumulating mutations within those, right? So it's like, okay, so there is duplication events, individuals born with redundant duplicate copies of certain strands of DNA, and then that's the raw material on which point mutations will continue to accumulate as generations go on. And I mean, you sound like you know a lot more about the details of all this stuff than me, but in the broad strokes, I'm looking at it and I feel like I'm seeing here from my level of understanding all the ingredients that you would need for significant amounts of change to accumulate given enough generations.
Yeah, and so yeah, there are some plant species that can have like redundant chromosomes. I think daisies
Yeah.
is one of them. So humans can't have that though. If you have an extra chromosome, you're gonna have probably death of the fetus because there's now more of this protein being made. It's just gonna throw everything off. And so I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Maybe that would be a good setup to see, okay, if we have like this extra chromosome that's being produced, which is just a copy of another chromosome, and it seems like it would use energy kind of for no reason, but um, it's like called polyploidy
Yeah.
plants. So this would be a good setup to see, okay, if we get an extra chromosome in this plant, does one of them change over time and the other one stays the same? Because you got to understand, even with mutation, that's not always a good thing. You got to also preserve the information that you've worked so hard to get. If you have super high mutation rates where we're just like changing stuff over time, I get the survival of the fittest. You're saying like, oh, it would cancel out the ones with bad mutations as a response, but you have to understand like if this is existing where nothing's able to preserve its DNA, like that's not good either. And then even within the plants, you can compare the duplicate chromosomes. They're pretty much the same, and they're just duplicates. And let me just say one
And for
last
now.
thing. You can respond to that point first, if you'd
No, I
like.
was just gonna say, for now, but go on,
Yeah, so I was gonna mention something else that's called orphan genes. So within like we have homologous genes between different species where we have a very similar gene between, different organisms, and between these genes, like we will see other genes that kind of seem to pop up from no ancestor, and it's called an orphan gene. It seems as if almost, God, whenever he was making this organism, like inserted it into this region it's going off of. It's not homologous to any other organism, and organisms will have unique genes to them. So, it just doesn't make sense, like, how this could even happen. You'd have to have an insertion of the same type of the same nucleotides on both sides of the DNA and have it form a sequence that's usable to make a protein with an activator, promoter, et cetera, et cetera. Stop reaching. And then if not, it's just if you just insert DNA on one side of the sequence, everything's going to be frame shifted and it's not going to be able to come back together to form the the both DNA strands in the spiral shape, whatever. Like it's not going
well,
to
I
match
don't,
up even.
well, there are viruses they're jumping around between organisms doing all sorts of weird insertions and stuff, right? Like as far as uh, what could elongate, DNA within an organism. Not that I'm a huge, expert on the processes, of how that works or how DNA elongament goes. I mean, I definitely, understand that for something as complicated as us already, to survive and maintain our level of complexity, like we're in a sense very delicate, like really simple bacterium that don't have chromosome structures, that just have, a coil of DNA or something, like are much more likely to survive if they are messed with, irradiated in all sorts of weird ways that totally mess with their genes and how much DNA they have. And it's like, yeah, okay, so as something gets more and more complicated, um, it is going to become more and more difficult, for that organism to survive and be viable if there's some like big radical change. So then maybe you are just limited at a certain point to simple singular point mutations. But I mean, it seems like we've got a lot of raw genetic material to work with already, like even if the kind of amount of nucleotides is fairly locked in for complicated organisms, that's still a lot of space for mutations to accumulate, to change, for things to flip, for things that were considered junk DNA to become reactivated generations down the line because of mutations that gives it a new purpose. I don't know. It just the only thing I'm trying to get at here is that my non-expert but interested, layperson understanding of DNA seems like it's a pretty wildly dynamical system that has a lot of room for change. So then my thinking about all this is like, um, even if a lot of individual things you're saying, make sense of like, oh, if it happened in this way, there'd be phase shifted, the organism wouldn't be viable. Okay, but like, are there no avenues for DNA to mutate in ways that leads to still viable organisms that could pass along those mutations and enter those mutations into the survival of the fittest? Like, it seems like life is changeable. It is mutatable.
Yeah, and that mainly will happen through epigenetics where you're just upregulating or downregulating genes. But like if you do have this happen, that's how you like this is why we have different species because the mother and father, like their chromosomes cannot come and line up to one another. If they don't match, that's how you like get unviable offspring. So if you got one, we got this like, these monkeys or whatever that have like this insertion here and that becomes somehow like, usable gene with all the other stuff and extra, nuclear machinery in place, then it like, the DNA sequences aren't going to line up between mother and father.
Yeah,
And
I mean, so
so
it sounds like
viruses, how they insert DNA, that's a very interesting thing. It doesn't that's going to take a whole nother 5 to 10 minutes, but you can respond to that.
no, I was gonna say, I mean, like, okay, so organism's probably not going to be viable if it had some like huge insertion, right? Of entirely new genes in from scratch. But what about just like I don't exactly understand what the boundary is between one gene and another. Like as mutations accumulate, um, can that not change, what we would have called one gene into different genes over, under enough changes?
Can you repeat the question?
Like, what
Can it
defines a
not
gene?
change what we call one gene to another gene? So between genes, you're gonna have like uncoding regions, and then you're gonna have there's different like start and stop codons, which lets you know that this is where the sequence ends for this protein. And
Mm.
so then you're gonna have like more DNA. It's not even junk DNA. They thought it was, but it's just so like proteins that are used for similar processes can have an activator site come attached to them on the histone, which is what DNA is wrapped around, and have like these proteins be transcribed. So it's not even junk, it's just for regulation purposes. But yeah, you're gonna have
So
that between different regions.
right. So is it possible for what like something that was a continuous coding region to break up into multiple separate coding regions or reverse for two coding regions to become continuous with each other? Like can mutations uh mess with, the start and stop codons, so that it changes,
Would you remove
where
the
one
junk
gene
between it?
ends and yeah,
You'd have to remove
or if there's a mutation at a stop codon, right? So that it becomes deactive in its purpose, then could that lead to a situation where you previously would have had like here's a gene and here's a break and here's another gene, but because the stop area has been mutated, now the whole thing has been merged into a single gene. Because now you're
You'd
just
have
going
one crazy
by.
heck of a protein. It probably wouldn't fold right. It has to be the exact like because you have hydrophobic and hydrophilic regions of the protein that allows it to fold right. So the enzyme site, like the enzyme substrate site can like match perfectly. So enzymes are going to be acting on something else. So you have to have the folding conformation absolutely perfect for that protein to match. It's called a lock and key model where it goes and matches perfectly to the substrate to break it down. So if you start adding all kind of junk to this protein, you're not gonna get it to fold properly. It's not gonna be able to attach to the substrate, and the enzyme's gonna be unfunctional.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure most changes lead to a deterioration of health and survivability. I mean, it's very difficult to imagine, in my mind, the level of complexity that's going on in cells, and in all cells all the time. It's unbelievable, definitely.
Mm-hmm. It really is. It's so much going on. When you throw one thing off, most of the time it just all the cards fall down.
Most, right?
Well, can you give me examples of like where we see this process happening, where you can get any new genes or new information which would be needed to get new species?
Well, what was wrong with
Or
the
even a
examples I
new
gave
species
earlier
we've observed happen?
of bacteria that down the line of generations, it had accumulated enough very rare, like kind of improbable, but nonetheless it happened mutations that after years and years of these ongoing experiments, the new bacteria could digest a completely new compound that we know because they froze the ancestor bacteria, so they could always go back and retest them. That the ancestor bacteria did not have that ability. I mean, that seems like a really substantial change of an organism that is able to digest an entirely new compound that its ancestor a few thousands of generations back or whatever couldn't have digested.
Well, what can you give an example?
I feel like that's a pretty cool example. Or what type of
That's
example are you looking for?
Like a specific one so I can look into the mechanism of action or what happened?
Sure.
Or even like I'm kind of getting open to like seeing examples even in the fossil record or any like even if it's like post-dictive or even if it's like, any example, like what is your best evidence for evolution? I'm open to anything. But you have to be specific.
Sure. Also, since you've got a background in cellular biochemistry and genetics and stuff, I'd love to hear what you have to say whenever you get a chance after you watch this. I was thinking back on this video where they talk about in a lot of detail the long-running experiment on particular species of bacteria that they kept
E.
cultivating.
coli?
Was it an E. coli experiment? Might have been.
You talking about Linsky's long-term E. coli experiment?
Let's see. It's some sort of long term.
Take your time.
Says this was done by Dr. Zachary Blount. I don't know. So I don't know if it's the specific one you were referencing.
How do you spell the last name?
Blount. Well, let's see. That's oh no, yeah, Lenski. Sorry, that wasn't the main person on it. Yeah. Professor Richard Lenski. There we go.
Yeah.
That's what.
I kind of described that one earlier with the E. coli. They put in a citrate heavy carbon. They put it in an environment where it had citrate as a carbon source. And so instead of being able to use that as a carbon source only in anaerobic conditions, after years of only exposing it to citrate and it having to use that as a carbon source, like it began using citrate as a carbon source in aerobic and in anaerobic conditions. And they so basically it already had the ability to do this thing, and now it's just doing the thing in all circumstances, in the presence of oxygen and when not in the presence of oxygen.
I don't know what you mean by had the ability to do it. I mean, the one thing I remember from this that was very clear was that it was like the original strains could not break apart this compound. They didn't have the enzymes that could do it. And then many generations down the line, the bacteria now did have enzymes that were capable of breaking down the citrate compound or whatever it was.
Mhm. That's what the media usually portrays it as. I mean, like, and people that do coverage on evolution research will kind of exaggerate stuff like that, but just look into it. Does E. coli have the ability to use citrate as a carbon source? It already did.
I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what a citrate is, so I'm a bit out of my depth here on this.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, just not in aerobic conditions. So, give me 1 second. Okay, microbiology citrate test, it normally comes out citrate negative. And so citrate is just citric acid that predominates at the normal pH. Like, so it's like citric acid. And it's like the first step of the Krebs cycle. Or the citric acid cycle that's used to like make energy. So normally it's citrate negative, so it's not using citrate, but so it can use it. It normally just uses it in anaerobic conditions, but by giving it only citrate, then they basically started to be able to, and I'm not sure if this has been studied or how long it even took. A lot of these changes that will happen actually happened pretty rapidly. But yeah, just using it as a carbon source all the time. There was a study that
Okay,
was
so I
done
mean,
with. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say. So you're saying like, okay, so there was something that was like this that it could do under different conditions, and then, um, I mean, whatever the details were, it's there were chemical processes that weren't happening. I mean, it's like, if you're saying that the main change was that, like, oh, it could have broken down this compound in the presence of oxygen, but previously not without oxygen. But then after all these generations, it was able to do it without oxygen. Well, that sounds like a very different chemical process that is
Okay,
now
so
taking place.
it's not a favorable way to use to use carbon. Even our own cells, to break down glucose, like um the easier way to make it is the one that uses the least amount of energy, but it has other options whenever it's put under high stress conditions. And so it can kind of switch back and forth between them. But let's say you're only in a certain condition, you're only in a high stress condition. Now you're going to be kind of reverting and falling back on that mechanism either way.
I mean, what I recall about this is that there was a very specific thing it could do that the first many thousands of generations wouldn't do at all. They were under the same high stress situation, and it took however many, years of this experiment, and that's God knows how many generations of these bacteria, uh, before they were able to do this new thing. You know, that I don't fully understand all the significance of, admittedly, but
So humans have two ways to make ATP. This is kind of reminiscent on the, E. coli as well. It resembles it. So, they can make ATP like in the cytosol and mitochondria using glycolysis, and they can also do it within the mitochondrial membrane using the electron transport chain. And so it can kind of go back and forth depending on the conditions in place. So one's from oxidative phosphorylation and one is from substrate level phosphorylation. And so depending on the conditions, it can kind of go back and forth between two mechanisms. And so, kind of the E. coli would do the same.
Why didn't it for the first several generations, though?
I don't even know how long it took.
He
For it
told you
to start.
several years.
yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I read up on this, but what I remember was that they were running the experiment for years before certain chemical markers started appearing within the petri dish. Like there was a citrate that was in the thing that they were planting the bacteria into that was essentially inert. It was not reactive. It was not degrading for thousands of generations of bacteria in these petri dishes, and then suddenly it started degrading. Suddenly new byproducts, new chemicals that weren't there previously are now appearing in the petri dish. And when they go figure out what's going on, they discover that this generation of bacteria is producing enzymes that the older generations of bacteria weren't producing. And so not a change happening within a single generation of bacteria, not an epigenetic change at all, a genetic change. It wasn't just individual bacteria in their lifetime under stressor conditions upregulating something, or something becoming epigenetically upregulated in a single digit number of generations. It was something that was completely absent for thousands of generations and then suddenly present.
Well, I think that they started to introduce it to more and more citrate heavy, to a more and more citrate heavy carbon source over time. So, I don't think it was this suddenly type thing. They're just saying it was more efficient at what it was already able to do, or it did it better in this certain environment.
I do not remember that being I'll have to go back and watch when I get a chance. I do not remember that being the description of it. I clearly remember the description of it being that this was a punctuated binary change in going from the bacteria not digesting this compound at all to suddenly digesting it. Not that there was a smooth increase in the efficiency with which they had been digesting it all along. But I guess I'll have to go back and review.
Yeah, I mean, the important point is like it already had the ability just in certain conditions. And so, I mean, yeah, things will learn how to survive in whatever conditions they're given. And you can see epigenetic changes happen for this as well. There's like there's a cool experiment that they're doing at the Institute for Creation Research in Dallas, Texas, where they have cave fish. They have a huge wall of these cave fish that the scientists are growing, and they're putting them in the presence of light and removing the light. And basically, they see within only a few generations, they lose eyesight, the eyes in the dark, and they regain them within the light. Now, if they were to have to like gain all the genes to do this, that would take a very long time, all the genes for the information to have eyes. But, they see only within a couple generations, they start to regain eyes in the presence of light, and so that's how you know it's more like genetic regulation rather than gaining a novel gene with a novel function. It would be cool if, like, citrate didn't I mean, E. coli didn't have the ability to use citrate as a carbon source to begin with, and, like, it, like, gained this completely new gene, but that's just not what happened.
All right, I'll have to go back and look it up then, because that's what I remember the description of it being, that they were very clear that it was a set of like very radical genetic mutations, not just a change in the regulation of existing genetic
Yeah,
material.
you're right.
But
It says around generation 33,000, one of 12 populations evolved the novel ability to consume citrate aerobically, a defining shift in metabolic capability.
But they already had the gene. The idea is like, oh, it was like the promoter region for this gene to be expressed. Like it could have like, you know, been put under a different promoter or whatever, rearranged, or you know, now it's like it's active in these conditions by, you know, whatever. Like now this gene is turned on rather than turned off in these environments. So it's not like the new gene, it's more so turning it on and off in different conditions. But you just read like anaerobic conditions. That means in anaerobic conditions, and you can search this up as well, like it had the ability.
I'll have to look into this.
Okay. Yeah, if anybody else has evidence for evolution, just bring it forward, please. Send it to me or whatever.
So what I'm reading is that they say that they categorize the species that had the ability to digest the citrate as not having, it says not having brand new genes from scratch, okay, but instead sequencing revealed rearranged versions of genes they already possessed. Now, my understanding, right, again, of the boundaries between genes is like a little fuzzy, but we were talking about it of like the genes are defined as the active coding regions of a strand of DNA. So I'm imagining this like, there was a sequence of words on a page, and the new bacterium here still had the same number of words, right? But many of the letters within some of those words were changed in a way that changed the meaning. That's my crude attempt to try to analogize this here. Again, I'm a fuzzy on what defines when we would say that a gene has undergone enough mutations that it's worthy of just being called a new gene. Is it just about saying like, oh, there were 10 genes here down the DNA, there was 10 distinct coding regions, and there's still 10 distinct coding regions. So that's why it's not a quote unquote new gene. It's just that this section of coding DNA is wildly different now in its functionality of what it does.
I wouldn't say so. If you could read whenever I read the paper, their ideas was that just that it's put under a new promoter or whatever. But, after 80,000 generations, I would expect, maybe like a novel gene or protein, but that just doesn't exist. And it's just like, you know, turned on and activated in these different conditions. But to get speciation, you have to get new proteins, new genes, and that didn't happen here.
I guess what I'm having trouble with here is it feels to me like the boundary between one species and another, the boundary between saying that this was this gene and that was that gene feels blurry. Like it feels like kind of a linguistic distinction in how we're categorizing things. And I guess the question I'm asking is, if we establish that mutations are happening, that any particular letter in the DNA strand could be changed, right? Then what is the limitation to that process? What is the limit? Like, regardless of where we draw the line and say this now counts as a new species or this now counts as a new gene because enough changes have been made. The ship of Theseus, it's a philosophical thing. Theseus. It was like this philosophical little thought experiment. Theseus is this ancient Greek philosopher, and he goes out in a boat, and along his voyage, parts of the boat keep breaking and keep getting repaired. And by the time the boat comes back to, his hometown, every single piece is different. Is it the same boat? And I'm kind of running into a bit of a philosophical issue here when people are saying, like, well, a species and its genome can undergo all of these different changes, but it's still the same species. It's like, it's if the pieces can change, then the being can change in my mind. And this feels like like a bit of just kind of like a linguistic line of holding the line of saying like, okay, so many different individual letters in this sequence of DNA are different, but we're still going to call it the same gene, and this organism now is so different than its ancestor, but we're still going to categorize it the same species. Therefore, speciation.
Check the text chat, zzpop.
Yeah. Yeah, ship of. Yeah, select all squares.
What was your question?
It wasn't really a question. It was just more of a like, if changes can happen, then changes can happen. Like I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't deny mutations. None of that. Like you can have changes happen, but the thing to get speciations would be like novel genes. That's one of the ways that you get classify bacteria, because normally speciation is going to happen like with the ability to reproduce with one another. If they can't reproduce, then they're different species. And so, but like with bacteria, it's a little bit different because, they do sexual reproduction. And so, it's a little bit different. They'll use like genetic analysis to draw the conclusion. But, even these are still considered E. coli because they have all the same like genes.
I'm reading that there's been a lot of observations of bacteria that over generations do change the number of genes they have through enough.
I mean, yeah, you can have like horizontal gene transfer, like happen between types of bacteria. Like they can transfer information from one bacteria to another. But like, through the evolutionary timeline, you'd have to have mutations lead to new genes.
I mean, so things have duplication events that physically elongates how much DNA they have. At first, often just redundantly, but then mutations accumulate on top of that to make what were once redundant duplications now different from each other. Like that's evolution. I don't know what else to call it.
What organism are you talking about?
I'm looking up sort of general things here. I'll look up some examples. Back to you. All right, I'm doing some research. All right. I have found this. I haven't yet gotten a chance to look into it, but in detail. But Escherichia coli, so maybe an E. coli strain, MDS42, which online claims is an example strain that, under laboratory observations of multiple generations, changed the number of genes it had.
Like by duplicating the same one?
It actually says this one, there's a large number of deletions in this case.
Of what? Deletions?
I know it does say both. I'm skimming over. Yep, bacteria says under observations, and various stressors it was subject to underwent many deletion and duplication events.
Mm-hmm. There's an interesting paper I came across a few years ago, actually, that bacteria can selectively turn off, delete DNA, or duplicate their DNA different segments to survive in different conditions, which was very interesting. It's like they had some conscientiousness over what was taking place to survive. It was absolutely incredible. Just, manipulating the genes present to, yeah. to make it, and I've been meaning to go back and read that paper on the mechanisms. I don't even think they fully understand how, but they'll selectively delete sequences or duplicate a sequence to survive. They do horizontal gene transfer where they literally transfer DNA between one bacteria to another to survive. But what would need to be demonstrated with evolution is like that mutation, natural selection can lead to new genes with new functions. That would ultimately lead to speciation. So that's like what should be demonstrated to prove that this is a viable mechanism to get, to have the origin of the species, as Darwin says. I do acknowledge they do a lot of craziness with their DNA and even selectively choose to delete and change certain sequences, duplicate them, delete them. It's just so crazy. Like and then once they put them back into their normal conditions, they'll go back to normal because it takes a lot of energy to do like antibiotic resistant mechanisms. It takes a lot of energy, extra energy they don't want to be using. So whenever you put them back in the normal conditions, they'll actually reset back to normal. Over generations, it'll just go back to the normal DNA sequence. And I'm sure that's what would happen in the E. coli one too. But yeah, they do a lot of interesting stuff with their DNA to survive. Just not like have mutation and new novel genes from that.
I mean, I I don't know what else to call duplication that changes the number of genes followed by mutations that change the function, a use purpose of genes as anything other than new genes forming, new species forming. But you did make an interesting claim there, which is the idea that you think these changes are reversible. That even when we see all these changes to the genome of a bacterium under one of these experiments, that if you were to then take those and put them back into, let's say, the original conditions that their ancestors had been cultured in, that all of this would reset back to some default starting point. It's an interesting claim, and
Yeah, I
it sounds
learned
like a
about that
testable
with
claim.
in particular with antibiotic resistant changes. Once you remove them from the antibiotic, usually whatever changes they use to survive will revert back.
So you're claiming that there's no long-term changes that occur in life that, like, that any
No, no,
sequence.
no, no. I wasn't trying to claim that. I was just saying that a lot of the times how they get around like these environmental changes will like use a lot of energy and they'll, go back to normal once putting them back in the same in normal condition. But that's why we have to be specific on the examples we're talking about because vague descriptions can lead to these, oversimplifications, which I'm not trying to do. It depends all on the scenario.
I guess, yeah, I guess it's an empirical question that we'd have to see is you take a bacteria species and you culture it over many generations in different environmental conditions until there are many genetic changes to it that we can see under sequencing, and then you take those and try to put them back into the original conditions and see, well, is it a closed loop? Is it that there is some sort of default state that any given species will return to or not? And if the answer is no, then you do have a new species now, right? Because it did not return back to the
Yeah,
condition
so
of its ancestors under
it
those
says right here when I looked
environmental
this up,
circumstances.
Nowinski, they returned it to a glucose only or richer environment. It loses the selective advantage of citrate use.
Well, loses the advantage. That's different than saying that.
Yeah, I'm still learning about. I haven't really researched whenever they put it back into glucose what happened. But I was referencing something with antibiotic resistance and just how they in the example I gave with the selective mutation, like it'll revert back and it seems to be okay, so loss of function, new mutations disable citrate utilization when it's no longer useful. So seems like it might have happened in this case too, where whenever they stopped putting it in a super rich citrate environment, they kind of lost that ability. Which is interesting. Like this is very interesting how bacteria is changing to survive to that condition, but preferably going back to how they were designed or whatever. Kinda like the pigs. Have you ever heard about them putting the pigs, like the I don't know the name of them, but the pink ones back into the wild and they became boars again?
No, that's cool.
The cavefish, when they put them back in the dark, they lost eyes again.
Interesting.
I wouldn't imagine every case it would do that, but for ones I've looked into, yeah. Okay, so 3 okay, evolved by roughly generation dominating. Okay, so the reversions can occur from citrate if it's not still in the citrate environment, like, to kinda lose that advantage, which is very interesting. Yeah, you might wanna look into that with them taking it out of those conditions, it kinda losing that ability.
I might be getting a bit tired, though I appreciate the conversation. This has been very, very interesting, very into the details of this, which I didn't know about. But I do have a question, which is, if you don't think that the biological process of evolution is occurring, then what are your thoughts about why species of life on Earth fit into taxonomical categories that resemble a tree in the sense that, we can categorize ourselves as having the features of primates, and primates as having the features of mammals, and mammals as having the features of vertebrates, so on, into, these ever kind of larger and more inclusive um, categories, in which there is this vast spectrum of life that is in gradations of, similarity, like we can look anatomically, genetically, and it's not just that life forms are similar to each other, but they're similar to each other in a hierarchical way, in the sense that, like, once you know that something is a mammal, all mammals share in common certain properties. No mammal has a crab claw ever,
They
right?
don't all
It's
share the
not.
same properties. Think about whales
No,
and
no,
humans.
no. I'm not saying they share all the same properties. I'm saying they share some properties. What I mean by
Yeah,
that is
I've
just
had
that,
this
like,
conversation with her many
yeah,
times about the nested hierarchy of morphology,
right. The nested
and
hierarchy of
God was
That's what
if
humans
God
make it.
had uniquely if God had uniquely designed every animal, then you would expect that you wouldn't see this nested hierarchy of morphology that
yeah,
we do
slap
see.
some tentacles onto a monkey. Exactly.
But the answer is, well, that's just the way God did it. That's her,
I guess so.
you know. Why would you
Uh,
guess how God does it? God does it the best way that it could be done, and that's, why are
right.
all the animals, bilaterally symmetrical, with 4 limbs, throughout the animal kingdom. Why don't we have, like, a bunch of, mammals? Some have 5 legs, some have 6 legs, right? We don't see that, but we see this very, very specific, structure, both in, like, the distribution of the nerves and central nervous
Yeah.
system and all that, all that stuff. And the explanation is just that, I guess, essentially, that God has, his creativity. I said, well, that makes it God seem that he's not as creative, because, like, humans design, like, even just vehicles we design with more differences than what God did in the animals.
Right.
Are
Not
they
in the
more different?
hierarchical
You
morphology.
need to come back with that, because are they more different than? Because I
Can
believe
I
they all
say one
have the
last
same
statement?
system working. Because if
I
you go,
figured
if
too, though.
I think it's just would be why recreate the wheel? Why would God recreate everything for each
And there's
species
no
when they could definitely just reuse a bunch of the things that he used in the other ones that are working to
and
make
there's
the
no
jump?
animal there's no animals with
Not
wheels.
easy.
There's no animals with tank
You're
treads.
saying with nobody's saying that. Jeez. I'm
Well, let me
saying
You
that
need a
respond to
vehicle.
vehicles
zzpop real
usually
quick
follow
because
the
I'm gonna
same
have to head out
system.
soon too.
Yeah.
So, like, the taxonomy, that's just made by humans. Humans can choose whatever standards they want to classify different things as. There's still
Oh,
things
wow.
moving between different classifications. Depending on how you classify it, you can make your own tree yourself. So this is kind of a man-made thing. And there's a lot of messiness too in this. If you look into the intricacies, like there's a lot of things where they're not all the same. You're just gonna have to like choose which one you want to put it in because there's things that aren't as clear cut as you might think. So that's just kind of like a man-made thing, and you can make your own tree based on whatever standard you want.
I mean, I know that there's messiness, that there's cases of subspecies that reintermix with each other, that there's jumping genes due to viruses and stuff like that. But I mean, there is one macro tree of life in that, like, there is no tree of life where an elephant is not in category mammalia, in category
Categories aren't real.
prokaryote. Oh.
No, but
Let me
even
tell you.
Linnaeus, who was a creationist, who didn't, before Darwin, before, even Linnaeus could identify that there was clearly a tree, right? A phylogenetic tree. Like he was able to realize that there is this nested hierarchy of morphology. He was looking at this from a completely religious perspective, and he identified the correct morphology characteristic distribution.
Mhm.
Okay, so for example, like with the Clandomonas, it's a single-celled organism. It fits a lot of categories of a protist, but it has chloroplasts to utilize sunlight for energy as well, other than just like chemicals and basically using chemicals to make energy can also use light to make energy. So which classification do you put in? You put it in protist or do you put it in plants because it has chloroplasts? And some funguses have the same thing that are very like fungal, but they also can have like chloroplasts like a plant, and then you just have to kind of choose what category you put it in. Slime molds are one I think got some of those got recently transferred over to a different category. And yeah, they these are just these are just things that humans put as labels.
I mean, okay, but I know like the story is getting updated as we learn more information and there can be debates about things, but that seems to not just be arbitrary, but in the progress towards greater clarity of things. Even with these cases that it had maybe been debated exactly. I mean, this just sounds like the tree is coming into greater resolution of clarity. What I don't hear happen is kind of radical, you know, changes in what like slime mold's never going to be in the primate category. Like that is never going to happen. Um, and it does seem. I mean, it seems like the macro
It is
structure.
arbitrary because I mean, like they even want to classify sometimes the orca different species just because they eat different things. So it sounds really arbitrary, and they're having huge debates about this.
Is there anyone?
One June morning, a guy by
Applications, depending on how you classify it, you can make your own tree yourself. So this is kind of a man-made thing. And there's a lot of messiness too in this. If you look into the intricacies, like there's a lot of things where they're not all the same. You're just gonna have to like choose which one you want to put it in because there's things that aren't as clear cut as you might think. So that's just kind of like a man-made thing, and you can make your own tree based on whatever standard you want.
I mean, I know that there's messiness, that there's cases of subspecies that reintermix with each other, that there's jumping genes due to viruses and stuff like that. But I mean, there is one macro tree of life in that, like, there is no tree of life where an elephant is not in category mammalia, in category
Categories aren't real.
prokaryote. Oh.
No, but
Let me
even
tell you.
Linnaeus, who was a creationist, who didn't, before Darwin, before, even Linnaeus could identify that there was clearly a tree, right? A phylogenetic tree. Like he was able to realize that there is this nested hierarchy of morphology. He was looking at this from a completely religious perspective, and he identified the correct morphology characteristic distribution.
Mhm.
Okay, so for example, like with the Clandomonas, it's a single-celled organism. It fits a lot of categories of a protist, but it has chloroplasts to utilize sunlight for energy as well, other than just like chemicals and basically using chemicals to make energy. Can also use light to make energy. So which classification do you put in? You put it in protist, or do you put it in plants because it has chloroplast? And some funguses have the same thing that are very like fungal, but they also can have like chloroplast like a plant, and then you just have to kind of choose what category you put it in. Slime molds are one I think some of those got recently transferred over to a different category. And yeah, they these are just these are just things that humans put as labels.
I mean, okay, but I know like the story is getting updated as we learn more information and there can be debates about things, but that seems to not just be arbitrary, but in the progress towards greater clarity of things. Even with these cases that it had maybe been debated exactly. I mean, this just sounds like the tree is coming into greater resolution of clarity. What I don't hear happen is kind of radical, you know, changes in what like slime mold's never going to be in the primate category. Like that is never going to happen. Um, and it does seem. I mean, it seems like the macro
It is
structure.
arbitrary because I mean, like they even want to classify sometimes the orca different species just because they eat different things. So it sounds really arbitrary, and they're having huge debates about this.
Is there anyone arguing that an orca is a reptile? Like,
yeah, but they're saying there are different species between the species, which they're both orcas.
Yeah, but
just
species is
because
highly even evolutionary biologists will take species as highly problematic. It's a very difficult delineation that humans make, and there's no argument that there's a lot of shades of gray between species, which is why species is problematic. But that doesn't mean then that we can't clearly identify the difference between, an owl and a primate and insect, right?
I mean, I feel like it's the height of tragedy to look at these sort of edge case debates and deny the dominance of the larger structure of the tree of life as an organizing principle, which, to be clear, is the only structure that would fit with the theory of evolution. Of just like, if we were created, then God created life organized in a hierarchy of similarity, which was the only type of hierarchy of similarity that would be mistaken for biological evolution. Any other way of designing life with similarities to itself.
Yeah, but this biological evolution was a man-made creation.
Yeah.
It's nothing that actually really points to speciation whatsoever.
Except for the entire taxonomical hierarchy.
No, that's just you making these inferences, which have not been witnessed ever.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to mention earlier when you sort of went into the philosophical side of it, because I don't know too much about biology, but there's another guy you might have seen. Have you watched Made by Jim Bob, zzpop?
Made by Jim Bob? No, I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
He's debated a lot of evolutionary proponents, and he's done a really good job actually, considering his knowledge is not great in terms of biology, I would say, but it's just in terms of philosophy, he's just challenging them, just saying things like, well, actually, what he tends to do is try and get them to walk him through how, say, a liver or something very specific was made.
Literally
the system.
Huh? I mean, that literally just sounds like argument from incredulity, like just like it's complicated. There's a lot of things that come together in a highly specialized way in the form it exists now. I can't imagine how it emerged through transition.
I mean, if you think about, for example, and this is within the scale of humans, right? If you think about a modern microprocessor and the amount of amazing technology, right? The most sophisticated machines humans have made and understandings of different physics to be able to produce modern microprocessors. And you say, well, how did that ever come from like humans like pounding rocks into sharp, pointy things, right? Yeah. Like we went from humans making sharp rocks and using rocks, rocks with vines tied to sticks to making a microprocessor, it's almost unimaginable all the progress that has to be made to where you can then produce a microprocessor, right?
Well,
if you have a mechanism of action of how the microprocessor works and how, whatever, but there's not even one for evolution. We can't replicate it.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, he's talked to some pretty knowledgeable people. I would say there's many debates online. I can send you a few if you'd like. They know a lot more about it than me, and they can't walk him through the simple steps of how a liver could be created, a specialized thing like this. They usually just sort of
simple.
They usually say,
Sorry.
well, there's a proto liver or something like that, and they kick the can down the road constantly. The bit I like it because they grant themselves these things. You see, they grant themselves populations, they grant themselves all kinds of things. The thing I like though is the philosophical side of it, which you touched on a little bit earlier. What is the essential thing? What is the essential? I like Plato's idea of forms, but Aristotle sort of evolved, if you will, the idea and said, why are you making it some, etherical thing? Why don't you just make it in the thing itself, right? And I like that because with evolution, when does a thing, it's like, when does like if, what am I thinking of? P not P, isn't it? Sort of thing. When is a thing not that thing? And it's completely arbitrary. You could think if you think in terms of cladistics, it's just one big branch, right? It's just one huge branch because it's complete. It's in flux. It's in constant flux. So I like that side of it. And Jim Bob is doing a very good job of sort of debating in that manner. And yeah, I'd recommend it. I'll post one in the chat if you like.
Things being in flux and changing is definitely a good description of evolution. Like there isn't a defined moment where we say that one species has given birth to another. It is the accumulation of smaller changes over time.
Yeah, it's more of a what makes that thing essentially that thing. You see?
Yeah, I don't know if there is something that makes any given species essentially that species. It's each
I don't think there is in evolution. There ain't in evolution,
yeah, it's
Sunshine,
snapshot.
and that's one of my major issues with it. That's why I don't think it's true.
Because you're uncomfortable with the ambiguity of where one species.
Yeah, man, and it would be like when did those Latin speaking moms that gave birth to their Latin speaking baby, how did that ever turn into like Italian and Spanish and Portuguese?
Yeah, that's exactly the same, Jake. That's exactly the same.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, like
no, it isn't. It isn't
God
at
make
all.
those different languages?
Well, why isn't it a good analogy?
It's like when they always bring the colors up. It's like the color spectrum. It's like when the green goes into the yellow. Oh no, it's not like that. That's a terrible analogy.
Wait a minute, hold on. How many? But there's not like 7 colors. It's all one spectrum. You can break it into as many colors as you want.
Yeah, but one specific color has a very specific frequency. It never becomes anything else. It's just that thing, right?
Interesting article on why in old paintings only have 3 colors in rainbows.
Now, so why do you think people get so weird about the existence of God or not?
I have no idea. I think it's.
I don't think that people for some reason feel like evolution excludes the idea of God, and to me it seems.
Well, if you look back,
Watchmaker, not the watch.
Fundamentalism is a direct response to evolution. They both occurred at approximately the same time.
Yeah, people making shit up. People have a problem with that.
It's not making shit up. Evolution is a fairly well
Wait, what? Didn't the guy go in the desert and then come back and say he saw a bunch of shit? Like, I'm pretty sure there's entire religions based on people just making shit up.
What?
Fucking Mormonism and
What are you
like
talking about?
just there's entire religions based off of people making shit up.
Well, that's why you need evidence too. Like, it wasn't just some random guy said something. Like in the Bible, like they had hundreds, thousands of eyewitness testimonies and the eyewitness accounts of what occurred, not just like somebody in the desert.
Where?
What?
Where are hundreds of eyewitness accounts of the Ten
Jesus at the
Commandments being
resurrection.
made?
That's why it spread so fast, Christianity.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the creation of Moses coming out of the desert with stone with religion.
Well, that wasn't even the beginning, but yeah, people saw God descend on the mountain. Viewers, even the Israelites saw that. They saw the Lord descend on the mountain as fire, and it shook the whole region. So it wasn't just him, and nobody else saw it. People saw God working, even with Moses.
Sick.
I'll post this one. There's so many. It's hard to choose, but this is one that was from about a month ago. So I mean, I'm trying to think of the people. So I don't know if you know PhD Tony. He's been on here quite a bit. He's debated him about it. I think Professor Dave maybe as well. I didn't watch that one though, but yeah, it's pretty good. I wouldn't particularly argue God from any particular flavor of religion, although I like Christianity. But I wouldn't argue it from that. I would argue it from a necessary position, grounding everything. You know, truth, morality. There's a contingency argument here. Everything's particular, right? Everything is particulars, and God is the necessary antecedent for everything. That's the way I see it. In fact, I'd go one step further and say, this is a bit radical, but God is the only thing that's actually real. Everything else is a sort of reflection of that necessary thing. And it's not a thing. But language starts to veil that.
Your brain in a jar.
Well, yeah, don't tap the glass, buddy boy. My jar is very fragile.
Well, the only reason I see for them sort of philosophical arguments is to fuck with people because they're not useful anyway, really.
Remember that next time you're in here and somebody wants to talk substance and the other person retreats to philosophy.
I just don't. I this whole the necessity cosmological argument for God. I've always just felt like that's nice. Okay, there's an ultimate origin for everything. There's an ultimate overriding thing that necessarily must be there that everything else is contingent on. I'm not really sure this is a proof, but I'll entertain it. It's like, okay, sure. Like I'll follow down this line of thinking. What next? It's like we can say, God is the ultimate necessary bedrock of all of the rest of existence. All right, great. What else does that say about God? And then people do want to link it to specific religious traditions that they believe in, but I've never heard any kind of compelling argument to bridge that gap, to bridge the gap from this completely just nebulously defined God as just really not defined as anything other than the thing that is there so that everything else can exist, and how you actually get from that to a personable God or a God of a specific religious tradition.
I just think it's strange that, like, if we look at the way, if we start at the first position that God is the creator of everything, and we look at the way that animals and plants, right? Like a plant starts as a seed that grows into a tree, and a human starts as a single cell that then, develops into the miracle of a baby that grows into a human, adult human. But then to say that, but when it comes to how the tree of life was made, this idea that that God wouldn't encode within a reproducing system in the same way that the seed turns into a tree or that the cell turns into a human, that within a reproducing wouldn't design the system to build out the tree of life, which to me would be the work of a superior creator. That they have to argue that every animal was, and plant and everything was uniquely, insect, everything was uniquely created. And somehow, for some reason, all based on the same building block of DNA, like the same 4 compounds, and that they have this nested hierarchy of form for just no reason, God still designed them uniquely. To me, it just seems completely incompatible with what we see in the work of God, right?
Deeply inharmonious. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I find that so striking is the kind of fractal nature of life, in that within an individual, within a cell, within a species, you see these kind of sort of microscopic retracings of the same pattern of how the evolutionary story describes the development of the entire tree of life that connects all of life. And I don't know, I mean, it's like, I find it a much more beautiful story to say that all of life is branches off of the same fundamental tree of life, than to think that we're like these each individually crafted little dolls, like created. I don't know, bothers me. I can say that beyond the
It
philosophy of the
doesn't
science
seem
of
like
it.
the work of a
It's
superior mind, especially when he designed a reproducing system that would be capable of flourishing into the tree of life.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't really have a dog in that fight. If God did it the evolutionary way, then that doesn't really change much for me, to be honest. I'm quite happy for it to be that way. I just don't think it is.
I'm a big fan of we got pollinated. There's God is just life from somewhere else that came and fertilized Earth.
Yeah, like that episode of The Next Generation that talks about why all the different races have like the same kind of morphology. I guess we have no TNG fans.
No, I'm with you. Got to find some in-universe reason to make all the aliens look like humans with prosthetics.
Hello, everybody.
Bonsoir.
Terra Show.
Je ne comprends pas.
Fermez la bouche.
Yes. I got kicked from a FED 24/7 for having a very geopolitics topic spoken about like that. Okay, so a Glober came in, right? Huh?
Okay. Wait. Are you a flurp? Are you a flurp or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Right. So I get kicked out, but the topic was all the planets in the sky are round. And I'm like, oh, contraire, bro. I have a telescope. I've looked at Mars, I've looked at Saturn, I've looked at Jupiter, I've looked at Mercury, and I've looked at Venus, like the 5 ones that we can actually see. You can't fucking see Neptune, and you can't see Uranus, you can't see Pluto. Fact.
Were you the guy talking about Venus is a cross, or?
Huh?
Were you the guy saying Venus looks like a cross?
Oh, you heard me say that a minute ago? Well, yeah, when it's full. Because Venus just follows moon phases. Like you're never gonna look at
I
Venus.
heard you say that.
Yeah, you're never gonna look at Venus in the sky and be like, "Hey, look, Venus looks like a sphere." No, it doesn't even look like a circle. Jupiter looks like a circle.
Did you get muted before you answered the other guy's response to that? Or
I got muted and kicked. And then the thing is, as soon as I got muted, they started telling him like, "Why do you think?" Like they started going along with how everything in the sky was like a sphere, and I'm like, "What the fuck, dude? No, it doesn't." I just
don't feel
detailed
bad.
how it
They're
doesn't.
hella trigger happy tonight. I got perma muted too. So and for like for interrupting AI, or not interrupting AI, but trying to participate in the same conversation as AI on the opposite side. So they nuts.
Yeah. Don't feel bad. I've been banned for months from that place.
But the thing is, I literally went through step by step with the Glober how his claim that everything in the sky looks like a sphere is wrong. And now they're arguing about how like they just disregarded everything that I said. And the thing is, I'm not just talking shit. I literally had a telescope made out of glass and aluminum that I would look at this crap with.
Well, okay, I guess I'll ask the same question the other guy did: is how do you reconcile that with like the view of the transition of Venus?
What do you mean?
When Venus goes, what is it, cross over the sun or something, and we can see it in the shadow?
Oh, dude, I would never. I'm not pointing my telescope anywhere near the sun. Like that was not happen. I've never. Now I know people will hook computers and solar solar up to their telescopes. Like mine was $300 on Amazon. But at the same time, there was literally nothing that there was nothing that my telescope couldn't see that others could see. Like
Yeah,
everything
but the
that
problem
a
is
ten
you
thousand
probably
dollar
don't have a
telescope could
very
see, I could
you
see
probably
too.
you're probably using like what
Yeah.
do you use, like a cheap refractor with some cheap eyepieces? I mean, you're not going to get a great view of Venus with that.
What do you mean a cheap refractor? Yeah, it was a
Like
Newtonian refractor. Yeah.
which model is it? Who made? Is it a Mead? What is it? Orion? What is
No,
it?
Celestron. Celestron or
Okay,
Celestion? I can never remember.
Celestron.
Yes.
Is it a reflector or refractor?
What shit? Okay,
Well,
so
just
it
tell me
had the mirror.
what's the aperture? What's the diameter of it? I'll be able to tell you right away.
6 inches.
Okay, it's a reflector.
Yeah.
They make
Yeah,
refractors of that
Newtonian
size, but they're
reflector.
heavy and big and
Yeah,
expensive.
it's got the big mirror at the base, and then like the
Yeah, that's
eyepiece
a
is all the way at
reflector.
the very top. Yeah, it was fair. It was.
Yeah, but that's like a
I thought it
very
was great.
it's a reasonable entry level telescope. Yeah, for a first
Very
timer.
basic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is with that, the hardware is garbage on it. Like you
Oh
step, it
yeah.
starts vibrating and shit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I
But
mean,
I mean,
they recommend you buy like for a budget telescope that you just stay away from any electronic drives because all the cheap electronic drives are terrible.
well, see, no, I mean, see, I could get mine tight to where like it's not going to drift. Like as long as I kept it tight, it would stay on its target, and I could just turn my knobs and stuff. But it was still
Yeah.
janky. I mean, it was metal, but it shaved. Like it shaved really fast. Like all the little gears and stuff.
I
Like
do find it strange that you say that the planets don't look spherical to you. I don't see a good explanation for Venus's phases if it's not spherical.
yeah, but when do you ever observe Venus as being a sphere? You don't. That was my whole point.
Just seeing it in different phases shows me that it's a sphere, right? You can see Venus
So
go
that
throughout all its
seems a little.
phases.
So you know what Venus is then. You have some weird secret knowledge that I don't have about Venus.
Well, it has different phases. It has the same phases that you see in the moon.
Yeah, and
There's not a
do they
good
match up?
explanation
It's
for.
not just, yeah, it's the same thing, but what does that mean?
There's not a good explanation for why it would look that way if it's not a sphere.
Why would it be a sphere in the first place to do that?
Because that's what a sphere looks like when you're looking at it from different angles of a light source in relation to a light source.
Eh,
New moon versus full moon versus quarter moon versus half moon. There's not a
yeah, I
great
get all that.
explanation. If it's just like a flat plate in the sky, there isn't a good reason why we would see these different levels of illumination.
Right. So pretend moon is a ball, and then imprint that onto Venus and say that because they both look kind of similar sometimes.
We know that the moon is a ball. You can clearly see that the moon is a ball just if you just take a
You
picture of
can't
it every
really. I
day for
don't
a
think
month,
so.
and you look at lunar libration, where you can see different sides of the moon throughout the month. It's very obviously a sphere through lunar libration because you see parts of the moon certain times of the month that you can't see other times of the month.
If you think that's
Due to the lunar
way too
libration, you can
good.
see like 58. You can see 58% of the moon because of lunar libration. Which, if it was a plate, you would never see that. You would never see more of them. More than the 50% of the disk, right?
You said right like you were asking me. I mean, that's your claim, buddy.
Well, what's the explanation for lunar libration if it's not a sphere?
I don't need to give an explanation about anything in the sky.
Sky magic,
You
man.
do.
You look up, all the physics falls apart.
Yeah, that's just ignoring like the fundamentals of what a sphere looks like when it's illuminated from different
Yeah,
angles.
but you look up, therefore, I don't have to be consistent.
It's just like forced ignorance.
Thank you.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like lunar libration, like everything between that, the way the Terminator looks, like looking at how craters are lit up at the Terminator, the different angles, like all of that, the angles of the shadows in the craters, the shapes of the craters themselves at different angles, like all of that makes you think that you're looking at a spherical object. You have to basically turn your brain off for some reason to not realize that it's a sphere. Combined with lunar libration, which I mean, when you do a time lapse of lunar libration, it's like, yeah, this is definitely a ball that's moving around.
Okay. What if I grant you that? What if I say, okay, the moon's a ball? Then what?
Yeah. So the reason why like early thinkers began to think that the Earth is also a ball is simply because of the uniformity of nature.
Did anybody who's a flat earther, when they were a glober, ever say, the moon's not a ball? I mean, did anybody ever actually think that? Can you see why globers say, oh, the moon looks like a ball? Like, you get what, like, when they say that, you understand why they're saying that, right? I mean, I get it. It does.
Yeah, for a
So
variety
what
of
does that have to do
reasons.
with anything?
Some people say it just looks like a light. It looks like a projection.
You know what the moon reminds me of? Like, whenever I looked at it, and this is when I was looking at it through my cheap telescope where I could still see everything that you can see, except I don't have a $5,000 motor attached to the bottom of it. When I would look at the moon, I mean, it would look different all the time. But the thing is, I kind of didn't spend a lot of time with my telescope when the moon was visible. In fact, I kind of hated the moon because if the moon's out, it's washing out everything else, and you can't see nothing but the moon. When it's a full moon, unless you have lenses and you're just going to study the moon, you're not looking at anything else. If you have a telescope, you know that.
Well, I mean,
one,
maybe
buddy.
if you're looking at like really, if you're trying.
Really, what now? Sorry.
Wait, real quick. That's hilarious because that's the exact reason that the photos on the moon during the Apollo landings didn't have any stars. Is exactly that reason.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to look like sorry, my kids are going nuts. If you're trying to see like this, if you're trying to see the center star, like the center of the Ring Nebula or something, yeah, you're going to need a dark sky for that. But there's lots of brighter objects that you can look at during a full moon. I mean, a full moon doesn't mean you can't see, clearly see the Orion Nebula and the trapezium and all that stuff. I mean, you can still see all that during a full moon. You can look at like all the bright star clusters,
Yeah, when you see the Orion Nebula and the bright star clusters during the full moon, It's kind of like watching a 2026 NFL game on a black and white TV with rabbit ears. It just, yeah. I mean, you're watching it, but does it look the same? No. I mean, come on. Yeah, the moon it takes away the brilliance of everything else. It washes everything out. When the moon's lit, it's fucking bright as shit. And you know what?
Yeah, you lose contrast.
If you don't have a filter, it hurts to even look at the moon itself. So the moon's not even pleasurable to observe through a telescope when it's full. Dude, if you put a telescope
it
with
can
no
be pretty
filter on the
bright.
full moon, it literally looks like you're just staring at a light bulb.
It's pretty bright. I wouldn't say it's that bright, but it is pretty damn bright.
Oh no, no, trust me. It is. When you're looking at the full moon through mirrors that get shoved through a lens into your eyeball, it's not fun. So I would never take my telescope out when it was a full moon, unless like it was absolutely beautiful weather conditions. Because sometimes then you can practice. You can use your piece of shit $300 telescope and start manually tracking airplanes and trying to lead them with your little shitty laser. You get about this far right here in front of the airplane, then you can kind of like track the airplane at night, and that's fun. I've looked at the ISS through it. Well, I mean, if you're going to look at the ISS through a telescope, it's usually dusk anyway, or dawn.
Dan, for a flurf, you actually know a bit about how this shit works. I'm impressed.
I think you should just trust Don Pettit, and the other astronaut when they told you what they see from the ISS, Like,
I mean, why would I trust Don Pettit's a liar? Yeah,
planets, Magellan
Don Pettit's a liar.
clouds, the Milky Way.
Dude, I'm reading here that Hayden Panettiere just died. And was anyone a Heroes fan?
Who?
What do
Anybody
you mean
watch
by
Heroes?
What is that? Is that a movie or a band?
That was like a popular TV show in the
Save
late
the cheerleader,
2000s.
save the world.
Yes, save the cheerleader, save the
No
world. She
idea
just
what that
died.
is.
It's in the news, but they're not saying why.
Like the girl on the series died?
Yeah, Hayden Panettiere is her name.
How old was she?
36.
4 seasons? Well, it couldn't have been that popular. Let's see. Dang, she looks kind of young. Why is she dead? Jeez.
Drugs.
89? Palisades?
Yes. 37. She died of drugs. Probably. She's little.
Jeez. She probably got some actual real heroin. Maybe she knew somebody from frickin' Afghanistan. Maybe the fentanyl just wasn't doing it. She actually had a
I don't know. I mean, what if she got?
Saudi
What if she got?
Arabian prince.
Normally, when people
taking
die,
care
you
of
say
me.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. She's dead. So God rest her soul. I'm sorry to speculate how. I shouldn't have said drugs, but it's just a stereotype. I apologize.
I mean,
I'm saying that he
probably a
was
good
just
guess.
fine. I'm just kind of a bummer. She's young as hell. Why the heck? My lord.
Yeah, she's my age. Anyway, so the moon is bright. So what is the moon and where is it? That's the question, really, right? I mean, that's what I just get down to brass tacks. What is the moon and where is it?
It's an endless source of cheese within the cheese belt.
Cheese, grommet, cheese.
I think it's provolone.
Cheese.
And I stick them in my socks in the morning so it smells like the sister's crotch.
Damn, boy.
Come on, it's the Sopranos.
I know.
So leave the cocksucker cheese. No, I'm sorry. I'm done. I apologize.
Yeah, the guys over in 24/7 are convinced that I'm a CIA spook, which is fucking hilarious.
Dude, they think I'm a Glober that's pretending to be a flat earther for 5 years. If anybody in here knows me, I mean, you know, I'm an I'm an obnoxious flat earther. They think I'm literally a Glober. It pisses me off. It's offensive.
24/7 is dead. Is there still people in there?
It's either politics or
24/7
English Hub
nothing.
where they're actually hanging out.
It's politics.
24/7's all right. They got they're equal to this room tonight. I thought this room was dead for a while, but I took like 8 months off of YouTube, off of Discord, and no, you guys have been very healthy lately, which you've always have been since I've been here.
Well, obviously.
Which I've been here since like 2021. That's a minute.
Well, Gio buys us ice cream on Fridays.
Wait, does that technically make all of you shills?
Shills, well, I mean, are we getting paid?
Actually, that's
Because I
5
don't get
years.
paid to be on Discord.
2021 to
Discord is a
2026 is 5 years. That's more than a minute.
yeah, it's been a minute. It may not have been. I mean, you can look like the thing is since the moment I joined this server, I never left it. I've never been like.
Hey, how long you
And I
been
will say I've never
24/7?
been 24/7.
How long you been at 24/7?
Not that long
More than
because
5
before
years?
that, no, I had Flat Earth 24/7 for years. Well, I say years for a couple years before 24/7, but it was always dead. Every once in a while, Kiwi would pop in and would fill up, but it was like maybe like once every
Like
2
in
weeks.
2018 or something?
No, this was well, I joined Discord in 21.
You said before
December of
24/7. Like,
20.
wasn't 24/7 started in like 2016 or some shit?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's old as fuck. I'm sure the mods in 24/7 have been there. I mean, dude, I didn't know about Flat Earth till like very late 2018.
Gio was in there in the beginning. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Freaking Indio just died. Freaking poor dude. I loved Indio. Good guy.
Yeah, rest in peace. India was a good guy. We argued a lot, but the thing is, what I will say about Indio is like if me and him got like into a really bad
Is
heated
that the guy with
argument.
the Fu Manchu avatar?
Yeah, dude. Indio's a good guy, man. Like
Really? Oh
Yeah.
man, I used to butt
Cancer,
heads with him a lot. That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's sad. People die.
yeah, and dude, me and India would butt heads like crazy. Like just like it would be kind and I would be kind of vicious. But the thing is though, like
he knows a
I'm
lot
not
of stuff.
right, yeah, if that happened on a Tuesday, if I popped back in there Wednesday and we both like chatted, it was as if that argument before never happened. He was always like, that's and that's a good quality.
Learn your lesson. Don't get things biopsied and don't take chemotherapy.
The fuck? What?
Oh shit, you got the big C, huh? That sucks.
Don't get things biopsied. Everybody I fucking know got things biopsied gone, including my girlfriend.
That's a good point.
Is that
We were talking
correlation?
about that over there. Cancer is a business. It's cancer, steak, and oil, man.
Dude, I'm just saying. I don't know anybody. Like I know like 3 people that refused biopsies and got tumors removed intact without freaking taking their bullshit freaking chemo. Saying, oh, you've got to shrink it before you remove it. No, you don't. You can remove it. Just fucking remove it and don't poke a hole in it before you remove it. Because I say so.
I feel
I'm
like
the
that
fucking
is.
patient.
That's not the first time I've heard that.
You poke holes in tumors all you want, but trust me, if you got somebody you love, tell them don't biopsy it. Remove the thing. I don't want it in me
Allowed.
anymore. And if they can't, you freaking tell them you'll find somebody. Well, my friend, she literally took a year. Took a year to find a doctor. As her parents and her sisters and brothers literally yelled and screamed at her, telling her, you got to get it biopsy. You got to get the chemo. You got to listen to your oncologist. Dude, if you've got an oncologist, you're probably going to freaking die. Oncology is just, it's It's the worst freaking thing ever.
I mean, if you're looking at like mortality rates of people recently diagnosed with cancer.
My mom lived with lymphoma for 7 years, dude. And freaking her oncologist was always like, "Oh, you gotta do chemo, you gotta do chemo, you gotta do chemo." Finally, she gave in. She was dead in 3 months. Like, dude, it's a nightmare. Chemo's a nightmare. My sister-in-law lived with tumors for freaking like 6 freaking years, and then she finally went and got him biopsied, and then shit spread really quick. Got some chemo. She was gone in like freaking 5 months. It's a nightmare, man. People think it's freaking, oh, you got to go with the, listen to the specialists. No, dude, they don't know what the hell they're doing. If they're really honest, they'll freaking admit they don't know what the hell they're doing. Dude, they're literally poisoning your whole body. Like if you've got some, I don't know. I know they've got some new things where they can inject metal flakes and then like irradiate like a certain area, like targeted shit. I don't know anything about that. I'm just saying, don't go poking holes in things that your body encapsulated, and don't.
You know how they say like 6 million.
But then they sent the cops looking for him, so I could see like that would be probably quite a few felonies there. Like,
wait, he targeted that's you brought him off because he targeted Nathan Thompson.
Well, so what they did was they basically claimed that they were Harvard. Well, how did it go? Like they claimed that they were like Harvard physicists or something, and they were going to send a signal to see whether the Earth was flat or whether it was round. And then they told them that they couldn't, like something happened to their special suits, and so they found that the same material was in like a duck suit. So they were wearing a duck suit, and they had them wear a duck suit, and then they said, "Oh my God, we just proved that the Earth is flat." And then he came into Gem Panda server bragging about how he was in 24/7, and then he came to Gem Panda server, and then he was claiming about how the Earth was flat, and we were trying to tell him that these guys are just tricking him, and he was arguing with us about it. You can go. I think it's still on. I think it's still on his channel.
Yeah, it is. I'm watching it right now. That's hilarious, dude. He got trolled so hard by that guy. Oh.
Jake, in the case that the truth about the Earth not being a globe completely comes out in our lifetimes in the next 1 to 2 decades, and all of this goes down in history, are you going to end up being like, I was with those guys. I was with them. Maybe I didn't quite agree with them, but that's why I was trolling as a flat earther. I thought it might have been flat. Like, is that what you're going to say? You'd be like, I was with them.
I guess. I mean,
I hung out with them just in case.
Yeah, you'll be. I know, just in case, right? I was there.
I could just try to change the narrative, right? Like I knew it was flat. I was always in jail. Everyone knew that it was flat in there. We had already figured it out.
You'll be like, well, I was just kind of sticking to the globe just to be the devil's advocate, but I knew all along. I knew. That's why I was with them, hanging out.
I knew you could see too far the whole time.
I mean, dude, when you think about it, it's really not a leap that the Earth is just stationary and planar. I know the thing of like, well, how's the whole model work, and how does the whole sky work, and I want all the answers. I get it. I mean, the realm is a complicated thing for one single human in the modern era like this, with limited resources, to be able to like detect what the whole realm is. But it's really not that, like, it's really not a stretch at all. That it's just what it seems, stationary and planar. The more difficult side is like, okay, well then how did they pull this lie off? How are they pulling the lie off? And what really is the Earth? But to me, I'm just saying, like, I unless you disagree, but I know you might say you disagree because of all these other reasons, but I'm just, yeah, I just think it's just kind of that sentiment. It's really not. It's not like a huge shocker that it just is what we experience it to be, and what humanity has thought it was since the beginning of time. But it is pretty crazy to think like how they're actually pulling it off, and how we've even gotten to this, how it's gotten to this, level of like severity, basically, that, and how they were able to like, yeah, kind of pull it off like under our noses without a lot of people knowing until the last decade or so, at least in the last 100 years kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Josh and I are pretty safe that we're gonna die believing that it was always a spinning ball and not flat and stationary.
No, you're not
Pretty
though.
pretty sure it's pretty safe.
It's not though. It's the most unsafe position. But but it but is it because like just because of the lie is so big that like you're like, the mainstream can't be wrong about this one? Is that why? Is that like part of why?
No, just because all my independent observations show that it's that it is not a flat and stationary Earth. But
what about your like 24/7 experience directly being flat and stationary? That's like an observation.
No, it's not
every
flat
day,
and
right?
stationary in my 24/7 experience.
That's what it seems like to everybody who has an intellectual integrity admits that it would seem that way, right?
No, because like I live on the West Coast here, and I can clearly see the horizon drop with elevation, and when I see the sky moving, I don't believe that I'm stationary and the sky is moving above me. I think that's just doesn't make anywhere near as much sense as the globe spinning.
Yeah, it's just that most people admit at least that the reason people always assumed that it's stationary is because it's seems stationary at least.
Yeah, objects weigh a different amount flying east versus flying west. None of that points to.
I mean, that really doesn't seem to trump your direct experience.
Yeah, well, that would be my direct experience, right?
Maybe for you, but it's funny, Gio. The truth already came out. It's not like we're waiting for the truth to come out for the officials to announce that it's flat. That doesn't make that if they announce it's flat, that's not the truth coming out. That's their version of the truth. So we're just experiencing the truth came out, and then there's people defending it and trying to save it and convince people that the truth didn't come out. But the truth, the paradigm's already shifted for the people that realize it's not a spinning ball.
No, I hear you. It is out, but the thing that it is not is that the paradigm's not shifted in any way, in any huge considerable way. Although, dude, Jamaican Robert, I was asking him what percentage of the world he thinks are flat earthers, and he said 10%.
10%.
Which I think is a bit.
Well, the thing is hard to say. Like, there's some crazy. I've seen some crazy numbers in polls, but I always wonder, like, are those people trolling the pollers? Like, how are these polls done? Like,
yeah, there are some polls that show really high percentage.
It seems impossibly high in some of those polls.
It's because a lot of the youth, like they don't really buy the globe the way we did. Like when even in our generation, I mean, I was born in the 1980s, 81, but it's like our generation, it was pretty much like no one really was a flat earther. But now there's a lot of people that are like in the youth. Now I'm not saying all the kids are, but there's more kids. It's like what I'm saying is that to kids these days, it's more of a thing of like, oh, well, yeah, flat earth is a thing. Some people think it's flat, some don't. Oh, I have a friend or I know someone who does or whatever. Oh, I haven't really made up my mind yet. I'm not sure, but people tell me that's a thing that, is not what they tell us. That's more the vibe of what a lot of the youth have. Whereas when we were a youth, it was just like, there wasn't even really I mean, we knew that, they used to tell us, oh, people used to think it was flat. And now, of course, we know it's a globe, pledge allegiance to the flag kind of thing. But it wasn't really a conversation in our youth the way that it is now. So I think like in some of those polls with some of the youth, yeah, it's showing like high numbers because they're not just saying, oh, it's absolutely a globe. They're more like either on the fence or.
I think it's more like you have a bunch of Gen Zers that are all trying to be edgelords, and when they see a ridiculous question like that, they're gonna troll the question. That's what.
No, they might troll a bit too. Yeah.
Depends on what they're judging it by too. Like these kids think everything's fake, right? And they I mean, it's obvious with a lot of the NASA stuff. I mean, are they just saying that they don't believe what NASA's saying, and then if they don't believe that, then the dominoes fall from there, basically. But it's not about belief; it's just about losing the belief, the full belief that you're on a spinning ball. think a lot of these kids see that how ridiculous that is at least. And that's what makes a flat earther, in my opinion, people that just stop believing in the ball, because then you go back to your base axiom. So that they're not going to ever like come out and announce something that's true. They're just going to give us their version. So it being the paradigm shift doesn't even really make it a true paradigm shift. They're just going to give us another version. Even if they give us a flat earth pseudoscience, it's not coming out that way. It's just like maybe they planned this all along. They're planning on doing that. You know what I'm saying? So the truth is already come out. I mean, anybody can go and find out that we're not on a spinning ball, right? It seems.
No, I can hear you that like it's come out in that way, yeah. But in terms of the mainstream, I mean, it would be like probably pandemonium if they actually came out in the news tomorrow and they're like, the whole globe is a lie, because it's so embedded. It would be like, who knows what would happen? Like people like lose their minds, or it'd be crazy if that happened. But I know you said some theories that maybe like the idea that they would kind of release it and then try to play on that or whatever, like use that as a tactic and like release it on purpose. I mean, those are all like interesting possibilities, but what I'm more referring to is that obviously the globe has like the kind of dominance or whatever in the world, and a stationary plane Earth is, even though there's a lot of people that are aware of it, but it's not really accepted in any way. And you know me, I've always like said that I think there do need to be more tests done to really like shift the whole paradigm. If that, and I know some people may think that's like a pipe dream or like a a shot in the dark kind of thing, or that would actually happen, that the test would be able to be provided, like various like tangible measurements of the lack of curvature, things like this, that would be able to be like submitted to the scientific paradigm, as it were, to actually start to shift the whole thing. Like if we could replicate like Dayton Miller and what I'm saying, like a lot of these things, and actually try to get things published and all of that it would take, can truth actually win the day, even in a paradigm that is completely like iron curtain locked down, controlled and manipulated? And that's what I mean, is like if the paradigm actually shifted on that level, where it would be like at the kind of scientific level, and then would the powers that be not be able to keep the cap on it, from that point forward?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Dayton Miller, and Dayton Miller had enough cred to like be known about by us, right? He did like what 5 million like test results or something with. So I mean, if just going by that, they can just discredit him. They hired his assistant after he died to discredit him. So I mean, they have their tactics that they want. I mean, no matter how conclusive your test might be, they could just discredit you, or just say that the test was faulty in some way, and that becomes the what people think, like the interferometry. They're still saying it proves there was no ether. So I mean, think about the way that they can manipulate the exact opposite result of what it shows.
Yeah.
I don't know. Somebody's got to come up. Somebody's just got to figure out the whole seeing too far thing. It's too easy. And I don't know. I think things like that you can see that an eclipse, it just happens to match up. That it's just the right distance. Between 93 million. There's a 93 million mile gap between the moon and the sun, but it just happens to match up perfectly to cover it and eclipse it. Like, dude, who believes that?